guys, welcome to What If Fanfictions. Today we are diving into what if Deku was Ghost Rider. Let's start. Izuku Midoriya walked to school with his head hung low. Things were not going well for the green-haired teen. Of course, there was the bullying and the fact that he was quirkless. But that's not what's been bothering him lately. What's been bothering him is that his mother had cancer. The doctors diagnosed it last week. Only him and his sister knew so far. She didn't have the heart to tell Mitsuki yet. Izuka had tried her best to seem unaffected, to stay strong for her brother, but it was easy to see that she was just as hurt by this news as he was. Izuka said, gaining her brother's attention. Are you going to be okay? You sure you can go to school today? Why yeah, I'll be fine, Izuku said unconvincingly. The two walked to school in silence, walking past a villain fighting a bunch of heroes. Heroes, Izuku said, excitement filling his voice for the first time since his mother was diagnosed. Izuka sighed. It was nice to see light in her brother's eyes. But this needed to stop. Izuka stopped Izuku with her quirk. We need to go. We don't have time for this. Izuka Midoriya. Quirk, telekinesis, allows her to move objects within line of sight with her mind. Izuku was about to argue, but his sister gave him the look, and he shut his mouth. Later after class. Hey, nerd, we aren't done here, Bakugo said, just as Izuku and Izuka were about to leave. Leave him alone, Bakugo, Izuka shouted, getting in front of her brother. Stay out of this, Bakugo snarled at her. Fuck off, Izuku yelled back. Kaken sto, Bakugo cut him off. You better not even think of applying to you, a nerd, Bakugo said. I'm going to be the only one from this shitty school to get in. You're not going to mess up my origin. Like hell that's happening. I'm getting into UA, Izuka said. With a weak quirk like that, Bakugo scoffed. And your fucking loser of a brother doesn't even have a fucking quirk. You think they'll let him in? He doesn't need to be a hero, Izuka said. There are other jobs besides being a hero. It never stopped hurting when Izuka said things like that, when even she didn't believe in him. Bakugo just smirked. See that? Even your own goddamn sister knows you're a loser. Fuck you. I didn't say that, Izuka defended. TCH, whatever, Bakugo said. Bakugo and goons went through the door, but just before leaving, Bakugo said this. You know, there is one way for you to be a hero. Just take a swan dive off the roof, and hope you get born with a quirk in your next life. Crash, that was the last straw. Izuka used her quirk to slam Bakugo into the lockers. Sis, stop, Izuku said. Why? There are no teachers around. Perfect time for this fucker to get what he deserves, Izuka shouted. Bakugo got up and glared at Izuka. You wanna fucking fight? Fine, I got shit to do, so I'll kick your ass in 2 days. Anytime, anyplace, blasty. Izuka spat. The woods. 2 o'clock. You better fucking show, Bakugo growled. With that, Bakugo and his goons left, leaving Izuka alone with her brother. Sis, why did you do that? Izuku asked. Why did I do that? Izuka said, glaring at her brother. Why the hell did you register for the hero course? Well, I mean maybe I could pass. You never know unless you try, Izuku argued weakly. Izuka glared at him for a moment before her gaze softened, and she sighed. Izuku, my dear brother. Izuka pulled her brother to her with her quirk. You and I both know what will happen if you try. You'll get hurt, or you'll die. You're not cut out for hero work. We've talked about this. Izuku didn't respond, sending his sister a hurt and betrayed look. Don't look at me like that, Izuka said. You're not going to be a hero. Please just stop before you get hurt. Izuku tried to look away, but Izuka used her quirk to force him to look at her. She grabbed his arms and stared directly into his eyes. I can't lose you too. Tears started pouring out of Izuku's eyes. He wanted to look anywhere else but his sister's eyes, but she refused to let him. He wanted to follow his dreams. He wanted to apply to the hero course. But that look in his sister's eye, that pleading, angrily worried look. He couldn't say no. Even if he tried, she wouldn't let him. After seeing the resignation and defeat in his eyes, Izuka spoke. When we get home, you're going to rescind your application. Understand? Izuku didn't respond. Izuku, she said more sternly, do you understand? Izuku nodded. Good, Izuka said. She released Izuku from her quirk. I need to go to the library. Izuku lied. I need to study. Izuka really wanted to go with him. It was rare she ever let him leave her sights. But after what just happened, she understood that he needed time to himself, and restrained herself. Okay, just don't take too long. I'll wait for you at home. With that Izuku ran off, a trail of tears behind him. At the library, Izuku cried in the corner of the building, leaning his body against the bookshelves. He had been here for what felt like hours, he just couldn't stop crying. Why can't I help anyone? Why am I so powerless? Why am I so worthless? If only I could do something. If only I could save Mom. Then, suddenly a book fell on his head. Ow, Izuku muttered, rubbing the top of his head. His eyes shifted down to the book that fell on his head. The book was black with a red pentagram on the cover. On the spine of the book was the title, The Book of the Occult. An occult book. Izuku had heard of these things. Books that tell you how to summon demons. Often doing so would result in bad things happening to the one who summoned them. Izuku knew the stories of people who made deals with the devil and were eventually forced down into hell. Although it was unlikely that any of those stories were real, any logical person would put the book back or simply ignore it. Izuku was not a logical person, however. Izuku felt his curiosity grow. It felt as if the book was calling to him. Unable to stop himself, Izuku grabbed the book and opened it up. Why not? It's not like my life can get much worse, Izuku thought. 2 days later. Alright, I'm going out, Izuku said. I'm gonna send that asshole flying. Please be safe, Izuku pleaded. You don't need to worry about me, Izuku said. If anything, I'm going to worried about you. Are you going to be okay with gone? You're only going to be gone for a little while. I'll be fine. Izuku lied. Izuku gave him a suspicious look. Normally Izuku was not as accepting of her choices, but perhaps he had just accepted that she knew best. Deciding that was the case, Izuku smiled and opened the front door. Sis, Izuku said. I love you. You know that, right? Izuku smiled. Of course I do. Love you too, bro. See you when I get back. Those words sent a surge of guilt through Izuku, because she probably won't be. With that Izuku left, closing the door behind her. Izuku released a breath he didn't know he was holding. The time was right. Izuku was out and his mother was asleep. It was rare that Izuku ever left him alone, so he needs to act now. Quickly Izuku scampered to his and his sister's room. It used to just be his sister's room, but a few years ago Izuku insisted that they share a room. He pulled out a can of red paint, 5 candles, a lighter and the book, that were hidden under his bed. As quickly and as carefully as he could, he made a red pentagram in the center of his room. Then he placed each candle at each point of the pentagram. After making sure it matched the one in the book, Izuku went to go get a knife from the kitchen. After bringing back the knife and turning off the lights, he stood at the edge of the pentagram. Izuku looked at the knife with slight hesitation. He took a deep breath, and cut his hand. Wincing slightly at the pain, Izuku opened his now bleeding palm out towards the pentagram. The blood fell onto it and a strange red glow started emitting from it. Izuku's eyes widened. It's working. Swiftly, Izuku looked down at the book and read out the incantation. Moseleving Bave Oemcot Earth of Ym Alcel. Izuku chanted. The red glow suddenly became brighter and brighter. Then the shadows in the room began to move towards the center of the room. The shadows started forming something. A man. No, a demon. The demon was made of thick shadows and had red glowing eyes. It looked like tall impish man with a cape around his shoulders. He. The demon laughed. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku flinched. Demon, you have done a good job in summoning me. The demon said, I know what you desire. You do not wish for your mother to die of cancer. Correct? Yes, Izuku said. Please, take my life, take my soul, take anything. Just please don't let my mother die like this. The demon laughed once more. So be it. I will ensure your mother is not killed by her illness. But your soul will forever belong to me. Do we have a deal? Izuku paused. A large part of him was scared. It wanted to say no. To end this right here and now. But an even larger part of him said to do it. That his life was worth nothing and should not get in the way of him saving his mother. Yes, Izuku answered. Then slash your throat, the demon commanded. Izuku hesitated. It was too late to go back now. He brought the knife to his neck. Izuka, Mom, I'm sorry, but eventually, you'll get over this. And you'll be happy. Slash. Sometime later, Izuku opened his eyes. He was floating in an endless black void. Is this hell? Izuku wondered. No, it is not. The demon's voice rang all throughout the void, and then the demon appeared in front of him. He was entirely red, with the only exception being his slick black hair. He was almost entirely nude except for a cape and a loincloth. Welcome to Purgatory, the demon said. This is the place between life and death. I made a little pit stop here because I wanted to show you something. Izuku looked at him confused and the demon extended his arm out to the side. Suddenly, a rift opened up and Izuku saw his dead body, lying on the floor of his room, a pool of blood forming under him. Why are you showing me this? Izuku asked. The demon laughed once more. Just wait, the best part is soon to come. In the rift, Izuku saw the door to his room open, and his mother walked in. Izuku, are you? Then she saw the body. A horrified look crossed her face. Izuku. For a few moments, she just stared in disbelief at his corpse, before clutching her chest. Wait, no, Mom, Izuku shouted, realizing what was going on. But it was no use. Inko fell to the ground. Dead, killed by a heart attack. Mom, Izuku wailed. The demon laughed. Don't you just love loopholes? I said your mother would not die to her illness and she did not. What a fool you are. No, Izuku whispered. No, this can't be. He turned to the demon. You did this. You tricked me. Of course I did. Humans in grief are always so hasty. The demon said. Now, let us begin your eternal torment. The demon reached out for Izuku. As his hand got closer, Izuku felt something burning. Within him, hate, all the hate and all the anger he had been repressing throughout his entire life bubbled up and directed itself at the demon. No, he shouted, swatting the demon's hand away. The demon gave him an amused look. Do you truly think you can resist me? Try all you like, in the end you. Then he stopped smiling. He was looking at something behind Izuku. No, he could not have found me. The seal shouldn't have let him. Izuku turned around to see what he was talking about, and he saw a bright blue flame, coming at them very, very fast. The blue flame got closer and closer, and then it overtook them. Izuku Midoriya was not in a good mood. She was walking home from yet another defeat at the hands of her most hated enemy. Battered, bruised, and beaten. God fucking damn it, Izuku cursed in her head. Why the fuck can't I beat that fucker? Izuku grit her teeth in anger. One day I'll beat him. I'll beat him and become the #1 hero. I have to. I will be the one to carry on my brother's dream. As Izuku walked home, she started seeing flashing red and blue lights. And she started hearing police sirens. As Izuku got closer, she started getting nervous, as she started suspecting that the sounds and light were coming from an area around her house. Her fears were confirmed when she saw police cars around her house, and her door open with the police officers inside. Quickly becoming concerned, Izuku ran up to a few police officers who stopped her immediately. Hey, you can't come in here, one of the officers said. I live here. What's going on? Izuka asked. The officers looked at each other nervously. Are you related to the people who lived here? The officer asked. Lived. Izuku was starting to panic. Yes, my brother and my mom live here. The officers cringed, two of them giving her sympathetic looks that only served to make Izuka's heart race and her body feel weak. I'm sorry, but, the dead, the officer said. Izuka fell to her knees. All the sounds around her became mute and her body felt numb. Rage, despair, shock, all sorts of emotions bubbled up inside her, building up, begging for release. Answer, she screamed. 1 week later, at school, Bakugo felt like shit. He had treated Izuku like shit. He knew he treated Izuku like shit. And up until now, he didn't care. But now he and Auntie Inko were dead. And the last thing he has said to him was telling him to kill himself. Even Bakugo's superiority complex couldn't keep him from feeling some semblance of guilt. Class, Midoriya will be coming back to school as of today. I'm sure you are all aware of the tragedy that's happened to her family. The teacher said, so I'm sure you will all treat her well. She may be a tad aggressive, but we all need to remember the hardships she's going through, and that perhaps a little anger is justified. In other words, if she kicks your ass, I'm not going to do anything. Every student except for Bakugo gulped. Many of them had been beaten senseless by Izuka, mostly for being mean to Izuku. She could hurt you without even touching you, making you fall down the stairs, dropping a bookshelf on you, things that could be deemed an accident. And seeing as most of the teachers either didn't care or favorited people with strong quirks, it would definitely be deemed an accident. Izuka never hesitated to hurt anyone who hurt her brother, and now with him gone, there was no telling who she might hurt. Midoriya, you can come in now, the teacher said. Izuka walked in, and what the students saw was not what they expected. Izuka rarely walked into class in a good mood. Normally she came in glaring at the other students. If she was in a bad mood, then it's common sense among the students to not even look at Izuku wrong, lest you incur her wrath. Heck, it was rumored that even Izuku wasn't safe from his sister's wrath on days like that. So when she walked into the room, they expected her to be infuriated. But instead, she was calm. She walked in without saying a word. There was no glare in her eyes. In fact, there wasn't any life at all in them. She sat down silently, looking at no one. Many took her strange calmness as a relief. But Bakugo did not feel the same. Later at lunch, come with me, Izuka said to Bakugo. There was no sign of anger in her voice. No sign of irritation. No sign of emotion. Bakugo looked at her, a little shocked at her behavior. He hadn't heard her voice so low since they were kids. And even then she's never sounded so dead. Fine, Bakugo said. He was eating alone anyway. His former goons not wanting to get near him for some reason. The two walked out of the cafeteria. Eventually, they made their way to the girls' bathroom. Izuka stopped and looked inside. When she confirmed that it was empty, she used her quirk and threw Bakugo inside. God damn it, I can't be in here, Bakugo said. Shut up, Izuka said. Just listen. Despite a part of him wanting to shout back at her, he decided to do as she said, just this once. Izuka took out a folded up paper out of her pocket. Do you know what this is? What? Bakugo asked. It's Izuku's suicide note, Izuka said. Bakugo's body went stiff, and his heart skipped a beat. What? Izuku killed himself. They found him dead on the floor in a pile of his own blood and red paint. Izuka said coldly. The doctors said that Mom probably died after seeing his body. The immense shock combined with her cancer probably causes her to have a heart attack. Bakugo's face was frozen in shock. All this new information was hitting Bakugo hard. He started sweating, even more so than usual. Oh yeah, Mom had cancer. The doctor diagnosed her about 2 weeks ago. You know, somewhere around the time where you told him to kill himself. Izuka said, her cold, emotionless tone never changing. Izuka looked at him, his eyes meeting hers. You killed my brother. You killed my mother. You killed my family. Fear, for the first time since he was a little. Bakugo Katsuki felt fear. He wasn't afraid of Izuka, no. Right now, he was afraid of reality. The reality that Izuku and Inko were dead, and that he was responsible for it. He was speechless. He tried to find something to say, but his mind was blank. But that's not the reason I brought you here, Izuka said, unfolding the paper. The first words on the paper say that Izuku wanted me, you, and Mom to read this together. And since Mom is dead, just you and me will have to do. Izuka used her quirk to drag the shocked Bakugo next to her, only as close as he needed to be to read the note. Izuka, Mom, Kaken, I'm sorry this had to end like this. But in all honesty, this kind of felt like the only way it could end. I held on to one dream for so long. That dream of being a hero is what helped me endure it all. The bullying, Izuka getting hurt, Izuka's possessiveness, my own quirklessness. But now, Izuka, Kaken. It took a long time, but you two have shown me that I have to start thinking realistically. I can't be a hero, no matter how hard I dream. But, without that dream, it feels like there is a hole in my life. Without that dream, nothing is protecting me from the feeling of uselessness that I feel every day. Without that dream, I can't convince myself that I'll ever be more than a Deku. And I don't think I can live with that. So I've decided to take my own life. I'm going to end the pain here and now. But, if I can, I want my death to mean something, to do something. I want to save Mom. It's a long shot, but I think I may have found a way to do it. I'm not sure it will work. In fact, it probably won't. But if it does, then I'll never see any of you ever again. Ever. So, if it does work, then I want to tell you everything. Mom, I've always appreciated everything you've done for me. You and Izuka have always been by my side, and you always knew how to cheer me up. But in all honesty, it hurt when you never supported my dream. I know you were just looking at it realistically, but it still hurt. Izuka, thank you for always trying to protect me, for always being with me and looking out for me. You and Mom are what kept me alive for as long as I was. But since I'm being honest, when I said I always wanted you with me, I didn't mean that literally. After the incident, you were always so clingy. I missed my privacy a little, and it felt like you were taking control of my life sometimes. And you disapprove of my dreams hurt more than Mom's. Kaken, to be honest, I'm not sure that Izuka or Mom will be able to convince you to read this, but if you are reading this, then thank you. I don't know what I did that made you want to do all those things to me, but whatever it was. I'm sorry, you know, even though I got angry at the things you did sometimes, even if sometimes I wanted to punch you. I never hated you. I've always looked up to you, for your power, and your determination. Again, I don't know what I did to make you hate me. But I hope you can forgive me. Mom, Izuka, I know you two might feel like you've failed me. But that's not true. You couldn't have stopped this. Honestly, I'm not sure anyone could have. I love you all. This is goodbye. Midoriya Izuku. Tears rolled down the eyes of both Bakugo and Izuka, as they read what would be Izuku's last words. And in his mind, Bakugo Katsuki said something that should have been spoken aloud, and much sooner. I'm sorry. Later that night at a morgue, Izuku opened his eyes. Everything was dark, but he could tell he was no longer in the void that was purgatory, as he could feel a cold surface under him. What's going on? Where am I? Is this hell? What was the fire? Izuku thought. Thoroughly freaked out, Izuku started moving his body around, trying to get up only to feel that he was in a tight space, forced to lay down. What is this? I want to get out. I want to get out. Izuku thought. Suddenly, Izuku felt something. Heat was quickly building up in his feet, making it feel as if his feet were on fire. "Ah, let me out," Izuku screamed. Izuku kicked, and suddenly, part of the box he was in flew off, revealing a dim light. The heat died down, and the pain started to fade. Izuku breathed heavily, recovering from his small panic attack. After about a minute, Izuku started trying to get out. Izuku placed his arms on both sides of the box, and tried to push himself out. This proved to be easier than he thought, as his whole body, as well as the surface he was laying on, slid out of there. Once he was out, Izuku saw that the box he was in was one of those body locker things in the morgue, and the part he had kicked off was the door. Izuku sat up, fully nude, and questions running through his head. Am I alive? How am I alive? How did I kick off that door? Izuku put his hand on his neck, revealing that the gash he made was gone. I think I'm alive, Izuku thought. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by a strange feeling that Izuku had never felt before. The blood of an innocent has been spilled, Izuku thought. Somehow, Izuku had a location in his head and had faces in his mind. Before Izuku could question this, anger suddenly bubbled up inside him. Anger on a scale Izuku had never felt before. Burning, screaming anger. Izuku stood up and clutched his head, getting his teeth and pulling at his hair. And then all he felt was pain. Izuku screamed in agony. His flesh started to burn from the inside, quickly turning black and falling off as he quickly became consumed by green flames. The feeling of his flesh burning and falling off only increased the anger he felt. Once his flesh had been consumed by the flames, all that was left was his skeleton. The pain was gone, and immediately, Izuku knew what to do. Under any normal circumstances, Izuku would stop and question the strange things happening to him, but these were not normal circumstances. Izuku had been consumed by rage, all of it directed at one person. One person, who he would be seeing very soon. Izuku got up, and with knowledge he didn't know he had, he used his newfound powers, and in a fiery typhoon, a flaming motorcycle appeared in front of him. Izuku got on, and after revving it up, he rode through the wall of the morgue and sped away to the destination ingrained in his mind. Elsewhere, at a warehouse. Blam! The body of a young woman fell to the floor, dead. God damn it. In the warehouse were 5 thugs, 2 holding a briefcase and 3 holding some cash. One thug was holding a smoking gun. What the fuck? Why'd I kill her? One of the thugs asked the gunman. She was a witness. What the fuck did you want me to do? The gunman said in retaliation. God damn it, now we have to make sure no one finds out about this, or we are fucked. One of the drug-dealing thugs said. Anyone got a quirk to get rid of this? One of the thugs asked. They all shook their heads. One of them sighed. Well, wait, do you guys hear that? Everyone stayed silent, and they all heard the sound of a motorcycle, getting closer and closer. Before any of them could comment on this, however, boom, Izuku came crashing in through the wall. All the thugs looked at him in shock. Is that a flaming skeleton on a motorcycle? One of the thugs asked. Izuku looked at the gunman. His rage growing. He knew what he had to do, what must be done. The gunman looked at him nervously. Did you want something, Gar? Suddenly a chain came out of Izuku's hand and Izuku threw at the gunman, wrapping it around his throat. The chain started going back into Izuku's hand, bringing the man closer and closer until Izuku had his hand around the man's throat. The man tried to fight back, struggling to escape Izuku's grip but to no avail. In an instant, Izuku let out a strong burst of flames, making the other thugs look away from its bright light. When they looked back, the gunman was nothing but a pile of ash and bones, and Izuku had now directed his attention towards them. Fuck this, one of them said, attempting to make a run for it. Izuku opened his mouth, and a spiked chain flew out and went right through the heart of the escaping goon. Shit, another thug said, quickly pulling out his gun. The remaining thugs all shot at Izuku, but their bullets either went right through him or bounced off his bones. Izuku outstretched his hand, and in it formed a shotgun. The thug's eyes widened, and one of them jumped out of the way. Izuku pulled the trigger, and a massive explosion shot out at the thugs who were standing there in shock, reducing them to bits of blood and ash. Izuku turned his head to the last thug, who was now desperately trying to run away. Izuku revved up his motorcycle and sped towards the thug. The man didn't even have the time left to see his life flash before his eyes, as Izuku ran him over, getting blood all over him. The blood evaporated instantly and Izuku looked over his work. Then, the intense anger he had been feeling dissipated. Quickly, his flesh started growing back, and in a few seconds, he was back to normal. What just? Izuku's eyes widened, looking over the carnage. Oh my god, I killed them. I. The smell of the blood in the air was too much, and Izuku vomited, puking violently on the floor. Once he was done, his head felt light, and his body weak. He fell off the motorcycle, and onto the ground. Unconscious, void. Am I dead again? Izuku asked. No, said a demonic voice behind him. Izuku turned around and saw him, or rather it was a demon, it had to be. A skeleton covered in blue flames. Who? What are you? Izuku shakily asked, fear filling his voice. I am Zarathos. We are currently inside your soul. Zarathos explained. My soul? Izuku asked. You are confused, Zarathos noted. I shall explain. Many years ago I was a demon who fed upon the souls of the wicked. However, Mephisto, the demon that you summoned, had disliked that I was keeping souls from going to hell, and to him. He challenged me. I knew he was not strong enough to beat me, so I accepted. But I was deceived. He left me in purgatory and placed a seal on me that would make it impossible to find him should he return, and impossible to leave. I was there for thousands of years until you appeared. Your rage summoned me and allowed me to find you, despite the seal. I then used my power to drive away Mephisto and break his hold over your soul. You see, I may not have been able to leave purgatory in my demonic body, but if I placed myself within your soul, and then used my power to revive you from death, then I would be able to return to the mortal realm. So that is exactly what I did. There was a short pause as Izuku took in all this information. So, you're in my soul. I am now a part of your soul, Zarathos said. We are linked, now, and forever. There's a demon in my soul, Izuku said meekly. Then he realized something. Is that why I killed those people? Izuku asked. Yes, I am the spirit of vengeance. Whenever innocent blood is spilled, I shall come to devour the souls of sinners. Zarathos explained. However, since I cannot physically appear, I have granted you what power I have left, to perform my duties. No, Izuku shouted. I would never kill anyone. You have little choice in the matter, Zarathos said. While taking over your body would be extremely difficult, influencing your mind is not nearly as hard. We share a soul, so all I have to do is share my rage for the sinners with you, and you'll find yourself unable to resist killing them. No, Izuku shouted. I'll stop you. I'll stop you somehow. I'll resist. I'll force you out of me. Zarathos shook his skull. Try as I might, your efforts will be futile. Suddenly a wave of blue flames flew out of Zarathos, and their surroundings changed. Now they were in a barren hellscape, covered in blue and green flames, and populated by screaming figures cloaked in shadow. This is our soul, Izuku, Zarathos said. The green flames are the manifestation of your soul, and the blue is a manifestation of mine. These figures you see, they are the souls that you and I have collected, burning for eternity. Izuku looked on in horror at the people suffering in front of him. Even if you were to stop me from devouring their souls, they would simply go to hell eventually. You cannot save those who have damned themselves, Izuku. Zarathos said. Now, accept your fate. Chains flew out of Zarathos's mouth and wrapped around Izuku. Ahhhhhh. Izuku yelled as he was pulled into Zarathos. The next day, with Mitsuki Bakugo. Mitsuki sighed. Things have been quiet since Inko and Izuku's death. Far too quiet. Normally the house was filled with the sounds of Mitsuki and Katsuki yelling at each other, but as of late Katsuki has been, not himself. He's been quiet, and reclusive. He hasn't even threatened to blow her up once. She, of course, was hurting from her friend's death as well. But she couldn't afford to grieve now. Katsuki and Izuka needed her. Speaking of Izuka, in Inko's will, she wanted Mitsuki to take care of Izuku and Izuka. Or rather, just Izuka now. However, Mitsuki wasn't stupid. She knew that keeping Izuka and Katsuki in the same household would likely end with her not having a house. So since she now owned Inko's old house, she just had Izuka stay there, which Izuka agreed to without hesitation. Izuka may be in shock for now, but when she eventually snapped out of it, then she would almost certainly take her anger out on Bakugo. Inko, I'll fix this, somehow, Mitsuki swore. Ring ring, ring ring. Mitsuki sighed and picked up the phone. What the fuck do you want? Are you, Mitsuki Bakugo? A man on the other end asked. Yeah, who the fuck wants to know? Mitsuki asked, not having the patience to deal with anyone's shit today. This is the police department. Since you are the current guardian of the Midoriya children, we needed to inform you of the extremely puzzling situation. The man said. Alarm bells went off in Mitsuki's head. For one, why the fuck would they say the Midoriya children when only Izuka was still alive? Second, why the fuck would the police be calling about something relating to the Midoriyas, and calling it a puzzling situation? Explain, she demanded. You see, late last night, Midoriya Izuku came back to life. The officer said. Suddenly the world froze, and Mitsuki's heart skipped a beat. What? Mitsuki said quietly into the phone. We don't know exactly how it happened. All we know is that Midoriya Izuku suddenly came back from the dead and kicked open one of the body lockers with what I'm told is recently developed quirk. The officer said. Don't fuck with me, Mitsuki shouted. Izuku was fucking quirkless. Like I said, Muz, we don't know exactly what happened, but we have the camera footage of what happened in the morgue to confirm it. The officer said. This is impossible. This is Mitsuki was struggling to organize her thoughts while also dealing with the shock she was feeling. So, Izuku is alive? Mitsuki asked, hope and desperation filling her voice. Yes, the officer confirmed. But where is he? Mitsuki asked. He's at Bioin Hospital. The officer said. But, Mitsuki immediately hung up the phone. Everyone get down here, now. It didn't take more than 2 minutes for Katsuki and Masaru to be downstairs where Mitsuki was rapidly putting on her shoes and coat. Get dressed, Izuku's alive. The two of them looked at her with the most shocked looks on their faces. After a few seconds, Masaru slowly walked up to Mitsuki and put his hand on his shoulder. Honey, I think you need to take a break. I'm not fucking crazy. The police just called. Something happened and now Izuku is alive somehow. He's at Bioin Hospital. Get dressed and get in the car. I'm calling Izuka, Mitsuki said. Meanwhile with Izuka, Izuka sat silently in the kitchen of her home, solemnly and silently eating a bowl of instant ramen. Her cooking wasn't exactly edible, so since Inko and Izuku were both dead, she was stuck with either getting food from outside or making things that didn't really require her to cook much. Although she hadn't actually been eating all that much. Not just because most of the food she got from outside paled in comparison to her mother's and even sometimes her brother's cooking, but also because it was a reminder. Each time she took a bite she would ask herself, why am I eating this subpar trash? And then she would remind herself, oh right, because my family is dead and I can't cook. She wasn't starving herself, but she wasn't eating anywhere near as much as she used to. As she ate, she tried not to look at the walls, still covered in pictures of happy memories that were now horribly painful to her. She didn't have the heart to take them down. After she finished eating, she threw the plastic cup in the trash and walked away. The silence that had been plaguing the house weighed heavily on Izuka. As while their house had never been anywhere near as loud as, say, the Bakugos, but even then it had never been this quiet. The sounds of Inko humming as she cooked, the explosions on the TV from the hero shows Izuku would watch while he scribbled away in his notebook. All gone. She made her way to where she had been sleeping all this time. The bathroom. Staying in her mother's room proved too painful, as there were far too many pictures hung up in there. And obviously staying in her and Izuku's room was not an option. She didn't really think staying in the room where her brother had killed himself and where her mother died of shock was a good idea. So every night she goes to sleep in the bathtub. She got into the bathroom, laid down in the tub, and stared at the ceiling. Where did I go wrong? Izuka asked herself. It was a question that she had frequently asked herself since she read her brother's letter. I was protecting him. I was fighting because of him. I just wanted him to be safe. Izuka told herself. Why is it that no matter how hard I try, I lose? Ring ring. Izuka's phone started buzzing in her pants, interrupting her brooding. She took it out of her pocket and looked at the caller ID. After seeing that it was Mitsuki, she answered. Hi, Aunt Mitsuki. Izuka, I don't have time to explain. The police called and told me Izuku is alive. Mitsuki shouted over the phone. Izuka's breath halted. Wah, he's at Bioin Hospital. I'll be out in front of the house in a minute. Hurry and get dressed, Mitsuki ordered before hanging up, giving Izuka no time to ask questions. Izuka stayed, frozen from shock, in the tub for about half a minute before jumping up and making a mad dash towards the closet to grab her clothes. Later at the hospital, the Bakugos and Izuka burst through the door and Mitsuki immediately went up to the woman at the desk. Where is Midoriya Izuku? She asked. Slightly alarmed and intimidated, the woman said. Just a second, before typing something on her computer. Oh, I'm sorry Muz, but he's not allowed to receive visitors at this. Where the fuck is he? Mitsuki asked again with the voice of something raised from the pits of hell. The woman, now fearing for her soul, said, Room 666. Third floor. With that, the group quickly ran towards the elevator, with Masaru giving the women a brief apology. After a short ride in the elevator, they had made it to the third floor, where they were met by a scruffy-looking homeless man and what looked to be a detective in a trench coat. Mitsuki Bakugo, we had a feeling you would show up, the man in the trench coat said. Despite the fact that we told them not to let in any visitors. The scruffy-looking man said. Like hell, I'm letting that stop me. Mitsuki shouted. Now let me through. Actually, we've come to escort you to him. The man in the trench coat said. It would probably go smoother than trying to turn you away. I am Detective Naomasa, and over here is the pro-hero Eraserhead. He's here for everyone's protection. They started following him as Mitsuki asked. Protection? What the hell do we need protection from? We will explain once we get to the room, Eraserhead said. Mitsuki was about to object when Masaru put a hand on her shoulder. Let's not push our luck, dear. TCH, was Mitsuki's response. Bakugo and Izuka had, however, were extremely anxious, and each step it took to get to the room felt like 1,000 miles to them. In reality, it didn't take more than a minute for them to arrive in front of the door. Everyone took a deep breath, and Naomasa opened the door. And inside was Izuku, alive and breathing. It was a sight that brought tears to the eyes of the entire Bakugo family and especially Izuka. Izuku, Izuka said faintly. She was about to run over to him, but Eraserhead stopped her. Don't get too close. It's dangerous, Eraserhead warned. Izuka did not like what she was hearing, and she was going to let Eraserhead know that. What the fuck is so dangerous? Izuka shouted at the hero. Oh great, she has a mouth on her too. Eraserhead thought. Naomasa sighed. You're not going to like this next part. Yeah, I figured. Now stop beating around the bush and fucking explain for fuck's sake. Mitsuki said. Well, as you've been told. Izuku here seems to have finally developed a quirk, one that allowed him to get out of the body lockers and is possibly the reason for his resurrection. Naomasa said. However, you hung up on our officer before he could tell you the rest. Soon after getting out of the body locker, he proceeded to go through a violent and painful-looking transformation, Eraserhead said. Afterwards he started acting differently, and broke through the wall of the morgue. Later he was found knocked out in a warehouse, with multiple dead criminals around him, all of which suffered extreme burn wounds. And it just so happened that your brother's new quirk seemed to involve pyrokinesis. Naomasa finished. Wait one fucking minute, Katsuki said. Are you trying to say that he killed those guys? Well, given the evidence, Eraserhead was cut off. Are you out of your fucking minds? Mitsuki, Katsuki, and Izuka shouted at them all at once. Izuku would never hurt a fly. Izuka said. Izuku's never punch a guy in his whole fucking life. Now you're calling him a fucking killer. Katsuki shouted. My taxes are being wasted on paying idiots like you. Mitsuki said. Please, let's be reasonable here. The boy is harmless, I assure you. Masaru said, much quieter than everyone else. The kid's case file does indicate that it's unlikely he did this of his own free will, Eraserhead said. What's more likely is that his new quirk caused him to go berserk, and for whatever reason, he killed those people. Or perhaps coming back from the dead has caused some serious mental trauma. Either way, given the state that the warehouse was in when we found him, his quirk is likely to be very powerful, and if it is causing him to go berserk, very dangerous. My quirk allows me to turn off any transformation quirks like his, so we shouldn't be in any danger. My quirk is lie detector. So if he really didn't kill those people of his own free will, we'll know. Naomasa reassured. And if his quirk is the cause of this, we will do everything in our power to. Everyone looked back at the bed to see Izuku awaken, thrashing against the restraints on his arms and legs. Ah, 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 he screamed in terror, as he tried to break the bands. His wrist started smoking and glowing, and the restraints quickly broke off and Izuku thrashing about. Eraserhead immediately activated his quirk, his hair raising and his eyes glowing red. However, Izuku didn't seem to notice, as his entire body started becoming engulfed in smoke. It's not working, Eraserhead said. Izuku, however, started to calm down, realizing that he was no longer with Zarathos. The smoke dissipated and the glow was gone. Wow, what happened? Where am I? Izuku, Izuka shouted, running up and hugging him with tears streaming like rivers down her face. Izuku, 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 sis, Izuku said, extremely confused as to how this happened. What, how, when, who? He heard sniffing and looked over to see the Bakugos. Aunt Mitsuki, Uncle Masaru, Kaken, Izuku said. While everyone else was swept up in the emotional moment, Naomasa decided it was time to act. Izuku Midoriya, please calm yourself. You're in Bioin Hospital. We found you passed out in a warehouse. Are you feeling okay? Naomasa asked. Passed out in a warehouse? Oh god, Izuku said. Oh god, no no no. No. Izuku started hyperventilating again. No, no, what have I done? What have I done? Izuku shouted, tears quickly coming down his cheek. Those people, I killed them. Everyone froze. Izuku. Izuku stuttered. It's a half-truth. Naomasa said. I'll have to ask more questions. Izuku, Naomasa said. Did you kill those men of your own free will? No, I mean, I didn't want to, but he made me want to. Izuku explained. He made me hate them. He made want to kill them. Who is he? Naomasa asked. Izuku hesitated. He didn't know who this man was. He looked like a detective, but should he tell him about Zarathos? Would he believe him? No, Izuku thought. No, he won't. No one will believe something like that. They'll say I'm insane, or that I'm lying. They'll try to lock me up. But that power, Izuku thought back to when he was fully transformed. The power was immense, and he had a feeling that that wasn't even all of it. They can't contain that power. He'll just make me break out. Izuku looked at Izuka, and then at the Bakugos. Are any of them safe? I know that they're not killers, but what if Zarathos was lying? What if he just wants to eat any human souls? He would make me kill them. With that terrifying thought in his head, Izuku made up his mind. I can't stay with them. I can't let them get hurt. Izuku wrapped his arms around his sister. Sis, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Izuku, what happened? Who made you kill those people? Izuka asked him desperately. Izuku embraced her harder. I'm sorry, Izuka. I'm sorry I was so stupid. I shouldn't have summoned him. I shouldn't have made that stupid deal. Deal? What deal? Who is him? Izuka asked. There was a long pause before Izuku let go of his sister. I need to go, he said. No one is safe. No, from him. Not from me. Sorry to burst your bubble, but you're not going anywhere, Eraserhead said. There are 4 other pro-heroes around the perimeter of this hospital. No matter how strong your quirk is, you won't escape. This was a lie. They only really had him and 1 other pro-hero. But the Izuku didn't need to know that. If you feel like your quirk is too dangerous for you to be around other people, we can escort your family out. Naomasa offered. Izuku shook his head. I need to use these powers. How do I use them? Izuku looked back at the memory of his transformation. Anger. That must be it. Zarathos used his rage to make me transform. So I should be able to trigger it if I get angry enough. But what's there to get angry about? Oh right. Everything. The unrelenting despair he felt every day of his life, his sister's control freak nature, his old friend beating him up, his death, his mother's death, this current situation he's in. Izuku grit his teeth as his blood began to boil, literally. Gah, ah, Izuku grunted as his flesh started to burn, much to the shock of everyone else around him. Izuku, what's going on? Izuka asked. In a panic. He's transforming, Eraserhead said, and my quick still isn't working on him for some reason. Everyone, Midoriya Izuku is trying to escape. I repeat, Midoriya Izuku is trying to escape. Naomasa shouted in his walkie-talkie. Izuku's skin and flesh started burning away, revealing the bones and fire underneath. He looked at his sister. Sis, I'll be back when I'm fixed. I'm sorry. Kaken, please take care of her. And catch. Izuku, now fully transformed, grabbed Izuka and threw her at Bakugo, who was far too shocked to catch her, causing them both to fall. Izuku rose from the hospital bed, only wearing his hospital gown, and walked towards the window. Oh no, you don't. Eraserhead threw out his capture gear at him, wrapping him up tight. Izuku didn't seem bothered in the slightest though, and merely incinerated the bindings. Izuku punched the wall, causing most of the wall to crumble. He looked back at Izuka and the Bakugos. Goodbye. Then he jumped out of the hole he made, falling 3 stories down before hitting the ground unharmed, making a small crater under him. Any people who were nearby ran away screaming at the sight of Izuku's transformed state. Sorry young man, can't let you go any further. In front of him was the rescue hero Backdraft, aiming his nozzles at him. On any other day, Izuku would have been geeking out like crazy. However, now he was not really in the mood. Backdraft shot out a stream of water at Izuku, which immediately turned into steam, and Izuku seemed unaffected. Backdraft was shocked and continued to up the water pressure, still not managing to do anything to Izuku aside from making his gown wet. Izuku ignored him and tried to figure out how to summon that motorcycle he had last night. Okay, so if I concentrate and think about a motorcycle. In a pillar of flames, the motorcycle arrived and Izuku wasted no time hopping on. The police who had been called by Naomasa made formation, the cars blocking the exit and their men aiming their weapons at Izuku. Izuku simply rode towards them at astonishing speeds and made the motorcycle jump over the cars. It wasn't long before the hospital was far behind him, and his quest to rid his soul of demons lay ahead. Police station hero meeting room. Naomasa walked into the meeting room and saw the many heroes who had gathered here. Mount, Lady, Death Arms, Backdraft, etc. All of them here to help solve one issue. Alright, everyone. Today we will be looking over what we know about Midoriya Izuku, or as the media calls him, Ghost Rider. After we look over all we know we will attempt to figure out a way to capture him. Naomasa said. Understood. Everybody nodded. Alright, Naomasa said, opening Izuku's file. Izuku Midoriya was a seemingly quirkless child, who, 2 weeks ago, committed suicide. Wait, if he killed himself then how is he alive? Asked. I'm getting to that, Naomasa said. About a week after he died, Midoriya suddenly came back to life and broke out of the morgue he was being kept in. It seemed as if dying had awakened his quirk. However, it seems that for whatever reason, he's being forced to kill criminals. We don't know if it's an effect of his quirk, some sort of mental issue he developed from dying, or an outside source. Either way, he's not doing this of his own free will. If he doesn't want to kill people then why doesn't he turn himself in? Death Arms asked. From what I've seen, he doesn't believe we can help him, Naomasa said. It seems like he's trying to handle this himself. Well, that's dumb. What the heck does this kid think he can do that we can't? Death Arms asked. To be fair, he is a 15-year-old who just came back from the dead and is being forced to kill people. I doubt he's in anywhere near a good mental state. A Razorhead stated. Fair point. Death Arms said. Regardless, about a week ago he escaped from the hospital. He's unfortunately been killing villains since then, although it seems to be trying to resist, to varying degrees of success. Sometimes he's able to let villains escape, but other times there are no survivors. Naomasa explained. Multiple heroes have attempted to stop him, but none of them have even come close to succeeding. Yeah, because he's too damn strong, said, grimacing as she remembered her encounter with Izuku. Yes, Izuku Midoriya's quirk is a transformation-type quirk, although it is unaffected by a Razorhead's quirk for whatever reason. He has an abundant amount of abilities. Firstly, he has enhanced strength, durability, speed, he can control fire that is so hot that it instantly evaporates water, and he can also make things out of seemingly nothing. Known examples of things he has made are chains, a motorcycle, and a shotgun. Lastly, due to the fact that his transformed state is literally a skeleton, he is completely immune to any quirks that target organs or require the target to be alive. His quirk has known limitations, drawbacks, or time limits, and he has shown no potential weaknesses whatsoever. What kinda quirk is that? Backdraft asked. It seems like he has multiple quirks. Yes, it's quite versatile. Nothing we've thrown at him has even fazed him. Death Arms said. I punched him as hard as I could, but he just ignored me and kept on doing what he was doing as if I wasn't there. And when I tried to grab him, he knocked me out of the building with a backhand. He just stood there while I was attacking him, Backdraft said. Literally just stood there. I stepped on him, and he just threw me off and ran away. Said. Midoriya seems to want to avoid hurting people that aren't his targets. This includes the heroes. Often Midoriya will try and pretend as if the hero he's fighting simply isn't there before escaping on his motorcycle. Midoriya has never directly and purposely attacked a pro-hero. If a hero binds him, he will just break out, with little to no effort. Naomasa reported. So basically we're all so weak in comparison to him, that he literally doesn't have to try, a Razorhead said. And on top of that, he has no weakness or any other limitations. Welp, we tried. Let's call All Might, said. Sounds like a good idea, Backdraft said. Whoa whoa whoa, Death Arms said. What, are we gonna just give up? I mean, he seems pretty unbeatable for us. Mount Lady said. Not necessarily, Eraserhead said. It's a transformation type quirk, meaning that he's still vulnerable when not transformed. So we just jump, the kid asked. I wouldn't say that, but yes, Eraserhead said. Still, you would have to take him down instantly, and without him suspecting anything, Neomassa said. That shouldn't be a problem, said a booming voice entering the room. Everyone looked at the door and saw that the source of the voice was none other than All Might himself. Because I am here. Meanwhile, with Izuku. Izuku was sat at the local library, looking through the books for anything related to demons. He had a stack of books on the table he was at, but none of them even mentioned Zarathos. Hhhh. Izuku screamed inside his head. It was a library after all. I'm getting nowhere. It was a full week since he left the hospital. He learned that he could make clothes using his powers, and had made himself a green hoodie and jeans. The hoodie was quite large, so it did a good job at hiding his face and hair. Maybe Zarathos was right. Maybe I can't get rid of him. Izuku shook his head. No, there has to be a way. I have to keep trying, or else people will die. Izuku found that he can resist Zarathos's influence, and keep himself from going berserk. All he needs to do is stay calm and keep his emotions separate from Zarathos. This is easier said than done, however, as Zarathos will try his damnedest to make Izuku lose control, often showing him images of whoever the victim is, in his head, whether they be alive or dead. Ironically, it was the victims who was still alive that made Izuku more likely to transform, simply because he could still save them, even if it would be at the cost of the lives of the villains. Children were also a sore spot for Izuku. If the victim was a child, alive or dead, Izuku would likely go berserk and transform. When he went berserk, it was very, very hard for Izuku to stop himself. Not impossible, just difficult. Izuku sighed. I need to find something to lighten my mood. If I stay frustrated, then I'll be easy picking for Zarathos. After putting all the books back, Izuku exited the library. Alright, where should I go? I only have so much money, so I need to be careful about how I spend. Izuku thought as he walked down the sidewalk, keeping his head down so no one could see his face. Izuku knew he needed money, because while he didn't need to eat to survive, not eating for long periods of time still would cause him a great amount of pain, and leave him in a bad mood, meaning that resisting Zarathos would be impossible. So he often just took money from some of the criminals he killed. Maybe I should go to a dessert shop. Those do help me calm down more. But maybe I should get something more filling, Izuku thought. Izuku was so lost in thought that he didn't notice that someone was coming his way. Oomph! Izuku cried as he fell to the floor after accidentally bumping into someone. Groceries fell to the floor and Izuku realized what had just happened. Oh God, I'm sorry. Izuku apologized, getting up quickly and looking at the person he bumped into. It was none other than Toshinori Yagi, aka All Might, in his skinny form. It's fine. All Might looked up and realized who he bumped into. When the two fell, Izuku's hood went down, exposing his face. What are the odds? All Might thought to himself as Izuku picked up his fallen groceries. Alright, stay calm. He doesn't know who I am, and I can't just transform, otherwise, I'll give away my identity. I have to just act like nothing's wrong, then I can find a place to transform, and I'll deal with him then. With a plan in mind, All Might spoke. It's fine, I wasn't looking where I was going. Izuku finished picking up all of his groceries and handed them to All Might. I wasn't looking where I was going either. Please accept my apology. Apology accepted, All Might said quickly, wanting to get away and transform. Thank you, have a nice day, Izuku said before quickly running past him. All Might waited for a few seconds before running in the opposite direction. I apologize for this, young Midoriya, but it's time for this to stop. All Might thought. A few minutes later, Izuku had finally decided to get dessert. Alright, now I just need to figure out where to go, Izuku thought. Then, in the blink of an eye, All Might ran up behind him, and delivered a chop to Izuku's neck, knocking him out instantly. Izuku's body went limp, and All Might caught him before he hit the ground. All the people around them looked at All Might with surprise and confusion. Don't worry everyone, I was just subduing a villain, All Might said. If anyone else had knocked out a child and then said that they were subduing a villain, people would be suspicious. But since this was All Might, everyone just flashed him a smile, cheered a little, and moved on. All Might hoisted Izuku onto his shoulder and jumped away. Now, to take him to Tartarus, All Might thought with a frown. He didn't like the idea of sending a child to Tartarus, especially since Izuku was not in control of his criminal actions. But Izuku was too powerful to be held anywhere else. A few minutes later, at the bridge to Tartarus, All Might looked at the Supermax prison with a sigh. He really didn't want to do this, but he had little choice. He leaped over the bridge, but then something else happened. Before he could reach the prison, Izuku's body suddenly burst into blue flames. Hot, 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 All Might shouted. The flames exploded out, knocking Izuku's flaming body off of him, and into the water below them. Oh no, All Might shouted as he watched the boy fall into the water. He dived into the water at breakneck pace, in an attempt to get the boy out of there before he drowns. Once in the water, he looked around rapidly while he swam downwards. Where is he? He couldn't have sunk that far down. Where did he go? All Might asked frantically. Then he saw something, deep below him, a bright blue light. All Might swam towards it, relieved that he had finally found the boy. This relief didn't last long as he noticed it wasn't just him heading towards the glow was heading towards him. A chain came out of the blue glow and wrapped around All Might's neck. And the blue glow was revealed to be Izuku's transformed state, riding a motorcycle underwater somehow. Little did All Might know that when he knocked out Izuku, it gave Zarathos a free pass to take control of Izuku's body. Normally Zarathos would avoid doing this, as the energy needed to take over Izuku's body would make it harder to influence Izuku for a while. However, Zarathos has been trapped for a very long time, and he was not about to be sealed away again. Even if it was unlikely that they could contain him at all, he was not about to take chances. Zarathos sped past All Might, yanking the chain around All Might's throat. The two burst out of the water, flying through the air until he landed on the bridge. He took the chain that All Might was still attached to and used it to throw All Might far away from him. He saw All Might fly into the distance until he was so far away, he could not be seen. Good, now that he has been taken care of, I should make my exit, Zarathos thought. Then again, Zarathos looked at the prison behind him. He could literally feel the sin coming off the prisoners from here. I won't be able to influence Izuku for a while after this. I should take advantage of my having control while I still can, Zarathos thought. He revved up his motorcycle and sped towards the prison. Meanwhile, with All Might flew through the air, a surprised expression on his face. How did he wake up so quickly? He thought. He shook his head. I need to get back there before he escapes. All Might flicked the air, creating a whirlwind that slowed him down. He kept flicking the air until he not only managed to stop himself but move himself into the opposite direction. All Might flew back to the bridge at rapid speeds, managing to make it back to the bridge. Or rather, what was left of it. The entire midsection of the bridge was destroyed, making it impossible to get in or out of the prison without the use of a quirk. All Might landed on the part of the bridge that leads to the city, looking at it with extreme confusion. Why on earth would he destroy the bridge? All Might wondered. Kaboom! He got his answer in the form of a massive explosion that came from Tartarus. All Might looked at the explosion with a horrified expression. Wait, is he trying to Kill all the prisoners in Tartarus. All Might thought. Kaboom. Nothing good can come of this. I need to stop him now. All Might thought. He leapt into action, jumping towards the prison. Inside the Tartarus, Zarathos was having the time of his life. He rode throughout the prison, riding through doors, turrets and whatever else they sent to try and stop him. The poor guards stood no chance, as Zarathos just threw them aside with ease. What's worse is that Zarathos eventually blew up the generators, freeing all the prisoners, although with the bridge destroyed they were still just as trapped. One of the guards ran for his life as the prisoner ran after him with murderous intent. The guard tripped and the prisoner caught up and was about to kill him when All Might came in and punched the villain in the face. Smash! He shouted, knocking the villain into a wall, unconscious. All Might, the guard said. Thank God you're here. Ghost Rider showed up and started destroying everything. Nothing we could do to stop him, he killing everyone. Do you know where he is now? All Might asked. Ahhhhhhhhhh. All Might heard someone scream. He's here, someone help. Someone else screamed. Kaboom. I'm guessing he's over there. The guard said. All Might leapt towards the screams and explosions, but by the time he got there everything in that area had been destroyed and everyone there was dead. He saw Zarathos looking around for his next victim when his eyes landed on him. You are an annoyance. Leave this place, or your life is forfeit, Zarathos demanded. Something is wrong, All Might realized. He's acting completely different from the reports, and his flames are blue rather than green. What's going on? Midoriya, stop this. You're not in control of yourself, All Might said. Izuku is not here. Leave now, Zarathos said. Something is definitely wrong. I need to subdue him before he kills even more people. All Might thought. All Might charged at Izuku, expecting to overpower him easily. All Might sent out a punch at Zarathos, only for Zarathos to catch it. What? All Might shouted in confusion. I put 70% of my power into that. Very well. Your fate is death, Zarathos shouted. Zarathos opened his mouth and flames burst out, enveloping All Might. Gah! All Might grunted in pain. His quirk, it's strong. I can't hold back, not even a little. All Might attack again, this time with full power, his fist coming out of the flames catching Zarathos off guard. The punch connected and sent Zarathos flying through several walls. Once Zarathos stopped, he quickly noted that he had made a dent in his skull. How could a human be this strong? Zarathos wondered, before shaking his head and healing the dent. No matter, a human is a human. All Might charged at him, and Zarathos sent bladed chains out of his mouth, cutting up the number one hero. Gah! All Might shouted as he was cut up, by a seemingly endless sea of chains spewing from Zarathos's mouth. Thinking fast, All Might grabbed one of the chains and pulled at it, causing Zarathos to go flying towards him. Texas Smash! All Might bellowed, delivering a fierce blow to Zarathos's skull, making it crack a little. The chains broke apart, before turning into embers, and Zarathos went flying once more. Zarathos sent chains out from his body into the ground, slowing him down until he came to a stop. Rahhhhhhhhhh. Zarathos let out a demonic roar, making everyone cover their ears. I will not be thrown around, like a child's plaything. He summoned his motorcycle and charged at All Might, running him over. That speed, I've never seen anything like it, All Might thought before getting hit by the motorcycle again. All Might was getting run over repeatedly, not able to keep up with the Hellcycle's speed. In response, All Might punched the ground, making it burst. Rah! Zarathos shouted as he was knocked off his bike by the sudden upwards force. Capitalizing on the opening, All Might zipped over to Zarathos and picked him up, holding the demon to his chest. All Might grit his teeth as the fires burned his skin, but he had to endure it. Midoriya, I know you're in there. Look at this. Look at all this destruction. This isn't what you want. Zarathos struggled, trying to escape All Might's grip as best he could. He could feel it, All Might's words were doing something, waking up Izuku bit by bit. It wouldn't be long until Zarathos lost control. No, not yet, not yet, Zarathos screamed. His blue flames started burning brighter and brighter, becoming more and more difficult for All Might to endure. Midoriya, All Might grunted. Rahhhhhhhh. Zarathos shouted as he put all his power into this next attack. And then everything was enveloped in blue. Krakakaboom. A massive explosion, visible by the entire city, rocked Tartarus, shaking the entire prison. Blue flames washed over almost everything, the hellfire killing every prisoner it touched, reducing them to nothing. After several minutes the explosion died down. All Might was on the ground, his body covered in burns and cuts. He'd only barely managed to stay conscious via sheer willpower. He opened his eyes and found Zarathos was standing a few feet from him, with his back turned. He's still able to stay in that form, even after using an attack like that. Does this quirk have no limits? All Might thought. He forced himself to stand, slowly rising, which gained Zarathos's attention. He turned around and looked at the rising hero. You're still alive. Zarathos turned and walked up to All Might, creating a sword in his hand. Normally Zarathos wouldn't go out of his way to kill an innocent soul, mainly because he wouldn't be able to collect their soul, but All Might was too much of an annoyance, he would be dealt with here and now. You are an annoyance. Die. Zarathos rose the sword upwards. Stop. Suddenly Zarathos was unable to move. No, no, not yet. Stop this nonsense. Izuku. Zarathos mentally commanded. No, I won't let you. Green flames swelled around Zarathos, as Izuku refused to let him move. All Might watched Zarathos struggle with the green flames, as he finally got to his feet. Young Midoriya is resisting, but even still, will that be enough? His power is seemingly endless. If Midoriya can't win, I'll be in big trouble. All Might thought. I need to end this now. But how? My punches are only making him angrier. Can I truly win this? All Might has never encountered such overwhelming power. Even All For One showed signs that he was being hurt, or that he was tiring. But nothing he did seemed to do much to Zarathos, and he didn't show any sign of exhaustion. It's as if he wasn't even human. But still, no, young Midoriya is counting on me to stop him. I can't let him down. All Might thought. He charged up One For All, putting every last ounce of power he had into his right arm. If I concentrate all my power into a single punch, then I know I can take him down. All Might thought, steam coming off his body as he pushed it to the limit. Zarathos looked at All Might readying his attack. No, stop this. Do it. All Might. Izuku cried out in his mind. Detroit. Smash. All Might yelled as he rushed Zarathos and delivered a thunderous blow to his skull. TWOOM. The whole area was enveloped in strong winds, as a tornado, once again visible from the city, blew through everything. After the winds died down, the results could be seen. All Might's body was steaming, as he tried desperately to stay in his buff state. Did that do it? All Might thought. He looked back, and his heart stopped. His head was gone. All Might could even see bits of shattered skull scattered around him. All Might lost his concentration and deflated into his skinny form. No, I killed him. What have I? Before All Might could finish, green flames shot out of Izuku's neck, and in mere seconds his skull grew back. All Might's jaw dropped in shock. How? Izuku, now back in control of his body, looked at All Might's skinny form, making his jaw drop. All Might. Izuku transformed back into his human form and ran up to the weakened hero. All Might. What happened? Did I do this to you? Izuku asked, his voice full of concern and panic. He seems to be back in control of himself. All Might thought. Good. I. Black spots filled All Might's vision and he dropped to the ground. Unconscious. All Might. Izuku shouted. All Might. Izuku looked on in horror at All Might's skinny form. Since he didn't know that this was All Might's true form, He had thought that this was the work of Zarathos. I need to do something. I need to get him to a hospital. But his wounds are so bad. Can doctors even do anything to help? Izuku was panicking hard. Wait, there's Recovery Girl. She could fix him. But where? Oh right, UA. I need to get to UA. With a destination in mind, Izuku transformed, focusing his rage at himself for failing to stop Zarathos sooner. Once he was fully transformed, he had chains fly out of his back and wrap around All Might. The chains pulled All Might onto Izuku's back, and once Izuku was sure he was secure, he formed a motorcycle and sped away from the crater. Later at UA, what the heck is going on? Present Mike shouted. The staff at UA had been busy preparing for the next entrance exam that would be taking place in the upcoming months when they saw the enormous explosion coming from the other side of the city. After that, an emergency meeting was called among all the staff. It seems like something has happened at Tartarus. The police are keeping the media out so we don't know much right now, but it seems like All Might's involved. Aizawa said. Well, then it shouldn't be that much of an issue. Midnight said. I'm not so sure. There's no way that explosion was caused by All Might. It looked like it was made of blue flames. And with an explosion that big would do a number on even All Might. Sniped said. Yeah, but it's All Might. There's no way he lost. Present Mike said. Boom. They heard another explosion, but this time it was much, much closer. The staff looked out the window and their eyes went wide to see that something had broken through the gates, and given the flaming trail of tired tracks leading from gate to school, it was pretty obvious who broke in and where they had gone. The alarms went off and the staff started to panic. Ghost Rider, how did he get through the gate? Midnight asked. I think it's pretty obvious how he rode through them, Aizawa said. Nezu, do you know where he is? Nezu looked at his security pad. The sensors say he's heading towards the medical wing. Is he injured? Recovery Girl asked. We can worry about that later, Aizawa. You focus on evacuating all the non-hero staff. Everyone else tries and detain Midoriya, Nezu said. They all nodded and ran out to fulfill their orders. Nezu jumped onto his desk and spoke into the microphone that was linked to the loudspeaker. This is not a drill. A villain has entered the school. All non-hero staff must evacuate immediately. UA's medical wing. Izuku silently thanked the signs that informed him where the medical wing was. As he rode through the halls of the school, luckily no students were here so the halls were relatively empty. When Izuku reached the nurse's office he ran in, All Might still on his back, and looked around for Recovery Girl. No, 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 where is she? He yelled. Unknown to him the heroes, including Recovery Girl, had just arrived and was standing right behind him. Their eyes went impossibly wide in shock when they spotted the skinny form of All Might, which they had just learned about, on his back. Swiftly regaining her composure, Recovery Girl coughed into her hand. Were you perhaps looking for me, dearie? Izuku looked behind him and was flooded by a feeling of relief. Yes, it's All Might. I know he doesn't look like All Might right now but I swear it's him. He's injured and I can see that now. Lay him on one of the beds. Recovery Girl said. Izuku used his chains and laid All Might on a bed. Midnight, Mike, I'm going to need some help. Recovery Girl said. The two heroes nodded and started helping her treat All Might. Izuku looked with concern and guilt bubbling inside him. Midoriya, Izuku, you're under arrest. Snipe said as he and Smentos stood either side of him. Izuku looked at them for a moment. No. They gave him an odd look, before looking at each other and nodding. They took out a pair of handcuffs and slapped them on Izuku's wrist. Izuku, who made no move to stop them, simply melted the handcuffs off him. With that not working, the heroes tried to haul Izuku away, pulling and tugging at the boy. This didn't work as Izuku simply stood there, not even attempting to stop them, and not looking away from All Might. Never had these heroes had an encounter wherein the villain simply stood there and ignored them. And there wasn't much they could do about it. Midnight was taking care of All Might and her quirk wouldn't even work on a skeleton. Mike was also taking care of All Might, and if he fought, he might hurt All Might as well. Guns have been proven not to work on Ghost Rider, so Snipe couldn't do anything. The rest of the heroes couldn't do anything without there being a chance of harming All Might. So the heroes just stood there, occasionally attempting to drag Izuku away, but it was still as ineffective as before. After about half an hour, they got All Might on life support. "Is he going to be okay?" Izuku asked, speaking for the first time since he got here. "He'll live," Recovery Girl said. "He'll be in a coma for a while, but he'll recover just fine." Izuku didn't hear that last part. All he heard was coma. He had put his hero in a coma. Well, Zarathos put his hero in a coma, but he failed to stop him. And to make it worse, he killed all those people in Tartarus. Emotions filled Izuku: sadness, guilt, rage. Rahhhhhhh. Izuku shouted in fury, his flames bursting out, making all the heroes jump back. Zarathos. He punched a wall, destroying it. Izuku then summoned his bike and sped off, and before any of the heroes could stop him, he was outside. Izuku's bike jumped over the UA walls and out into the rest of the city. "I need to fix this. I need to get Zarathos out of me now," Izuku thought as he sped through the streets. A few weeks later, All Might opened his eyes groggily. His whole body hurt, and he couldn't move an inch. Partially due to his injuries, and partially due to the fact that he was in a full body cast. What happened? This is UA. All Might thought. How did I get here? What happened to Midoriya? Then he remembered the end of the fight. His defeat. That power, it can't have been a single quirk. No, there's no mistaking it. Izuku Midoriya has multiple quirks. But the only way a person could have multiple quirks is, All Might cut off that train of thought. No, I can't be. I killed All for One. He can't possibly be behind this. But I can't think of any other way. Did he give his quirk to someone else before he died? Or perhaps there's something I'm not understanding. As All Might was thinking, Recovery Girl walked in and saw that he was no longer asleep. "Oh good, you're awake," she said while walking up to him. "What happened?" All Might asked. "You were brought in by Midoriya, Izuku," Recovery Girl said. "You were heavily injured, a lot of burns, bruises, cuts and broken bones. Not to mention your exhaustion. I'm surprised you woke up as quickly as you did." "How long was I out?" All Might asked. 2.5 weeks. Recovery Girl said. "You were in a coma." 2.5 weeks. All Might repeated. "You should rest for now. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, as do we. But for now, you need to recover," Recovery Girl said. All Might hesitantly nodded, knowing that if he refused he would likely get one of Recovery Girl's signature death glares. Another week later, the UA staff had gathered for a meeting once again, this time with All Might included. The heroes couldn't look away from the number one hero, in a wheelchair and covered in a cast. It was bizarre to see someone so strong appear so weak. Nezu coughed, gathering everyone's attention. "Thank you for gathering everyone. To start, I think we should restate everything we know." Aizawa nodded, picking up a piece of paper and reading off of it. About a month ago, All Might engaged Izuku Midoriya and seemingly knocked him unconscious. What happened next is unknown, but a few minutes later, Midoriya was attacking Tartarus, which resulted in the confirmed deaths of 489 prisoners, 255 prisoners injured, and 78 prisoners who either escaped or were so thoroughly incinerated that we can't find a body. All Might recoiled at this news. Even if they were prisoners, some of the worst people in Japan, even, they didn't deserve to be slaughtered like that. No one did, and he was responsible for it. He was the one who knocked out Midoriya, which seemingly caused this whole mess. What's strange is that only 2 guards died and only 5 were injured. But both the deaths and the injuries were caused by the prisoners rather than Midoriya himself. Even those who got caught in the massive explosion were completely unharmed. Many even report getting hit directly by large fireballs but coming out fine. Aizawa continued. In the end, we had to transfer all the remaining prisoners to other prisons while Tartarus is rebuilt. On the same day, Midoriya burst into the school with you, heavily injured, on his back. Recovery girl said. We attempted to arrest him, but he just ignored us until eventually fleeing. Present Mike said. It was rather embarrassing, Smentos said. Still, we don't fully know what happened during this incident. All Might, could you fill in the blanks? Nezu said. All Might nodded. I stumbled into Midoriya by chance, and after getting away to transform I knocked him unconscious as fast as I could like we planned. And then afterward I took him to Tartarus, but as I was taking him there he suddenly burst into flames and fell off my shoulder in the water under the bridge to the Tartarus. I went in after him only to find that he had transformed. But strangely enough, his flames were blue rather than green. Blue. Midoriya has never been reported to have blue flames before. Are you sure it wasn't just the water in your eyes? Midnight asked. No, he was blue even after we exited the water. All Might said. So then that massive blue explosion was Midoriya? Aizawa asked. Yes, All Might confirmed. Many of the teachers' eyes widened. They had suspected that Midoriya was responsible for both what happened at Tartarus and what happened to All Might, seeing as everything was pointing to it being him. But when they saw him, it couldn't have been too long after his fight with All Might, and he didn't have a scratch on him, nor did he look tired after unleashing such a massive attack. It just seemed impossible. Please continue, Nezu said, wanting more details. After Midoriya transformed, he brought us both out of the water, and threw me away from him. All Might continued. By the time I managed to get back to the bridge, he was already laying siege on the prison. I jumped in as fast as I could, and after managing to find him he seemed different from the reports. He was very violent, and he seemed to be enjoying the havoc he was wreaking. He even spoke differently from before. And with those blue flames, he was almost completely different from the reports. Did he attack you? Aizawa asked. I think I attacked him first, but after that, he did fight back, quite viciously too, and he had a dense aura of murderous intent. He definitely was trying to kill me near the end of the fight. All Might said. But before he could, I think I managed to get through to him and he started resisting. Green flames started wrapping around his body like he was fighting himself. Midoriya has never purposely harmed anyone but villains before, Aizawa said. Something is definitely up. Maybe it's because All Might is so much stronger than all the other heroes. Can't just stand there when All Might is punching ya. Sniped said. Even if that were true, it wouldn't make sense for him to want to kill All Might, Aizawa said. And from what we know of Midoriya, he is an All Might super fan, so if there's any hero he wouldn't want to kill, it's him. You're correct. This combined with his change in behavior and fire color leads me to two conclusions. Nezu said. 1. Someone is directly controlling Midoriya, or 2. He has developed multiple personalities. Multiple personalities. Isn't that a bit far-fetched? Midnight asked. Midoriya was thought to be quirkless, and quirkless people aren't necessarily treated all too kindly by other people. He was heavily bullied by other children and mistreated by adults. And according to his sister, he didn't have any friends or family other than her and their mother had cancer. Aizawa said. And in case you forgot, he killed himself. That's all the proof you need to say he's mentally unstable. According to his sister, Izuku was a very shy and polite young man who would typically attempt to stay optimistic, despite his condition and mistreatment, and that he always wanted to be a hero, Nezu added. It's possible that a second personality formed out of pent-up aggression and frustration, and that second personality is taking it out on villains, doing what he dreamed of doing, but in a very twisted sense. That's dark, Present Mike said. To think that a child had to endure all that, it would only make sense he would develop some sort of mental illness. 13 said, with a sad expression no one could see. We can discuss this later once we can consult Naomasa and perhaps some mental health professionals, but for now let's address the elephant in the room, Aizawa said. All Might, did you lose to Midoriya? And if so, how? All Might looked down. Yes, his abilities are insane to say the least. His physical strength and durability matched mine, and his fire is much hotter than Endeavor's, and it gets even worse. At first, I thought my blows were not doing anything to him, but in reality, he was just regenerating after every attack. Regeneration, Midnight said, so on top of all his other abilities, he heals as well. Are you sure your attacks weren't just not affecting him? Present Mike said, I mean I know it sounds crazy, but so is him having a regeneration ability. I'm sure of it. All Might paused. You what? Aizawa asked. I tried putting all my strength into one attack, in a last-ditch effort to take him down. All Might said, and I spit it out, Aizawa said, showing no mercy. I shattered his skull. All Might admitted. I even saw the bone fragments all over the ground. At first, I thought I had killed him, but he just grew it back. The teachers were shocked. They all started speaking at once, asking multiple questions at the same time until the room descended into chaos. That is until Nezu spoke up. Quiet down, quiet down. Despite barely being able to hear him, the teachers almost immediately followed the instruction. They knew what awaited them if disobeyed him. They would have to deal with a metric ton of paperwork. Nezu cleared his thought and directed his gaze at All Might. Yagi, you're sure that you saw his head grow back? Yes, All Might confirmed. Did you find any sort of weakness while you were fighting him? Nezu asked. No, All Might said. Even after unleashing that massive attack and growing his head back, he didn't show any sign of fatigue. He didn't even seem like he was in pain. I couldn't find any weakness or limitation. If young Midoriya hadn't managed to get a hold of himself, then I would have died. That statement weighed heavily on all the heroes. For years they had relied on All Might's unparalleled strength, a strength that no other hero had even come close to matching. An unasked question lingered throughout the rest of the meeting. If All Might can't beat Ghost Rider, then who can? An hour later, the meeting had come to a close and all the teachers had left. All except for two of them. All Might and Nezu. It's a good thing that news copters aren't allowed in the airspace around Tartarus, otherwise my secret could have been exposed. All Might said, that's about the only good news that came from this. Indeed, but let's not beat around the bush. Nezu said, we need to find you a successor. As soon as possible. Yes. It's unavoidable now. I need someone who can take on Midoriya. All Might said, and possibly even him. Would you perhaps be referring to All for One? Nezu asked. Yes, him. All Might confirmed. I think it's possible that he's alive, or that he transferred his quirk to a successor. Nezu nodded. I think you may be right. After all, Midoriya definitely has multiple quirks and it would explain how a seemingly quirkless child developed a quirk post-death. I can't think of any other explanation. All Might said. There was a short pause before Nezu spoke up. I have a candidate, he said. His name is Mirio Togata. He's going to be a third year this coming semester. I want you to meet him as soon as possible. If you say so, All Might said. I do. We need to pass on One for All as soon as possible. Nezu said, we're lucky that Midoriya is a kind-hearted young man. But all that past abuse and trauma, combined with what he's experiencing now, if we don't capture him soon, he's going to lose himself. And if he does, then it could be hell on earth. Izuka sighed. It's been months, since she's seen her brother. For the first few months she and Bakugo, separately, of course, spent most of their time looking for Izuku, but to no avail. Eventually, the two of them had to give it up, as basically everyone told them to stop and let the pro heroes handle it. This wasn't an easy thing to do, because according to the news, their quirks literally don't do anything to him. But despite all the distractions, she was still able to pass the UA entrance exam. And so now she did what she could, got dressed, ate breakfast, and went to class. Izuka entered the abnormally large door of Class 1A and was met with the most unpleasant news she's heard in months. That she would once again be in the same class as Katsuki fucking Bakugo. What are the fucking odds? She thought. Ida at Bakugo about putting his feet on the desk. Bakugo just ignored him. He looked at Izuka for a moment before swiftly looking away. Ida stopped to see what Bakugo was looking at and saw Izuka. You there, your uniform is sloppy and not put on in a manner that. Izuka stopped him. Shut the fuck up, Izuka said, tiredly. I've had so much shit to deal with, and I need none of yours. That language is. He was interrupted again, this time by Bakugo. Give it a rest for eyes. Bakugo shouted. Pull the stick out of your ass. Bakugo and Ida kept arguing back and forth. Izuka didn't care. She took her seat, and quietly she waited for class to start. The teacher rolled in, literally, in a sleeping bag. Took you more than half a minute to quiet down, said the teacher, pulling himself out of the sleeping bag. It didn't take long for Izuka to recognize the man. It was the hero who had been at the hospital, Eraserhead. He talked in the exact same way he talked at the hospital. Like he was tired of everyone's shit. Something Izuka could relate to. Get into your gym clothes and meet me outside near the track, Eraserhead told them. Well, at least he's not wasting time, Izuka thought. Later in the girls' locker room, Izuka hoped that she could just quietly get dressed and be on her way. She wasn't trying to make friends, she never had. But of course, Izuka rarely ever got what she wanted. Your name is Midoriya, right? Asked Tsuyu. Fuck, Izuka thought. Most of the locker room froze. Midoriya, you mean like, Izuku Midoriya, the guy who blew up Tartarus? Mina exclaimed. Yes, he's my brother, Izuka said, and I would really appreciate if we wouldn't talk about him. The room was dead silent afterwards, with no one speaking until almost everyone had left. Izuka was finished changing and was about to leave when Mina spoke up. Hey sorry about bringing up your brother and all, Mina said awkwardly. You probably didn't want that brought up. The only reason anyone knows the name Midoriya is because of my brother, Izuka said. She was just asking what 9 other people in our class were thinking. We're twins after all. Must be pretty rough, Mina said nervously. I'm not gonna judge you for something that's not your fault, and I don't think the others are going to either. Thanks, Izuka said, before leaving. Later outside, Eraserhead explained their task simply enough. He was basically sizing them up, seeing what they could do, what they were capable of. It made perfect sense for a teacher to do something like this on the first day. Izuka felt like she would like this teacher. This sounds like fun, said Okako. Fun, Eraserhead said in a very unhappy tone. In that case, the person who scores last will be expelled immediately. What? Shouted most of the class. That's not fair, protested Okako said. Life isn't fair, Eraserhead said. That doesn't mean you have to make it worse, Izuka said, cutting Eraserhead off. What was that Midoriya? Eraserhead said, in a calm yet very cold voice. Don't act like we don't know life is unfair. I can't say anything for everyone else, but my life is hell right now, and I sure as hell don't need some asshole making things worse. Izuka shouted. This seemed to really upset the blue-haired boy. You cannot speak to a teacher like, shut up or I'll break that exhaust pipe out of your leg and shove it down your throat. Izuka shouted, getting more and more pissed. Midoriya, I understand your situation has been difficult for you, this is why I'm tolerating this for now, but if you continue there will be consequences, Eraserhead warned. Oh, thank you for your generosity. I know how much it must hurt to not expel me on the spot considering you're willing to expel someone for not having the right quirk for your stupid test. Izuka said. Well, perhaps you would prefer I expel you instead, Eraserhead said, having enough. Izuka grit her teeth. This asshole. She was about to give the man a piece of her mind, when suddenly. "You're going to do what?" Izuka, Bakugo, and Eraserhead froze, as they immediately recognized the voice. Aizawa quickly turned around and saw that it was in fact Izuku Midoriya standing behind him, wearing a blue UA hoodie with a UA uniform underneath. "How did you get in here?" Aizawa asked, immediately getting in front of his students. "Your security system sucks against people who have access to teleportation. All I had to do was create a portal inside the school, and then change my clothes to avoid suspicion," Izuku explained. "He can create portals now. Great, just fantastic. Like he needed more annoying to deal with abilities," Aizawa thought. Izuku. Izuka looked at her brother with wide eyes. Izuku looked at her with equally wide eyes. "Sis, I didn't know you'd be in his class." Izuka tried to move towards her brother, but Aizawa grabbed her to keep her from moving, using his quirk on her for good measure. "Everyone get back inside and get the staff," Aizawa ordered. "Oh god, it's him. Run," Mineta shouted in fear. "Oh shit," shouted Kaminari. Realizing that there was a villain right in front of them, everyone, save for Izuka and Bakugo, ran for it. Izuku was having none of that, however, and transformed his arm before shooting a fireball in front of the fleeing students. "Watch out," Aizawa shouted. The fireball landed in front of the students, turning into a massive firewall. The students stopped in their tracks as their exit was completely blocked. "Sorry, but I would rather not have to deal with the entire staff," Izuku said, keeping his arm transformed. "But I won't be here long." "Shit, well, I can't beat him, and neither can anybody else in the school for that matter. The only thing I can do is hopefully get him to go away," Aizawa thought. "But firstly, what was that about expelling my sister?" Izuku asked. "Empty threat. After the tragedy that just happened to her, UA publicity would go down if expelled her," Aizawa said. "Oh, okay, that makes sense," Izuku said, visibly calming down. "Well, thanks for clearing that up. But, back to what I came for, you were involved with my case, right?" "Yes," Aizawa confirmed. "What about it?" "Well, you see, there's this book that I took from my middle school's library," Izuku explained. "It has a pentagram on the front. I was holding it when I died, so I thought that maybe the police might have taken it. I wouldn't know about that. I only got on your case after you came back to life," Aizawa explained. "Oh," Izuku said dejectedly. "Well, what about that detective at the hospital? Naomasa handles criminal cases. He would have had no reason to get involved in a suicide case," Aizawa explained. "Damn it," Izuku cursed. "Just when I thought I had a lead." Eraserhead wanted to ask what exactly he had a lead on, but it would be better to get Izuku away from the students as soon as possible. This didn't stop Izuku though. A lead on what? Fucking damn it, Midoriya, Aizawa thought. Izuku sighed. "Sis, I told you I'm going to fix this, and if I find this book, I'll be one step closer to doing it. I know that doesn't make any sense, but trust me, I know what I'm doing." "It doesn't sound like it," Izuku said. "Just turn yourself in, let them help you." "They can't help me, Izuku," Izuku shouted back. "I'm the only one who can fix this. I'm the..." Then, mid-sentence, he felt it. The blood of the innocent had been spilled. "H-h-h-h-h," Izuku shouted in a mix of pain and anger, as he clutched his head in agony. His flesh started to burn, glowing cracks started forming in his skin, and flames and smoke started coming off of him. "No," Izuku shouted. He could feel the rage and pain burning through him. He wanted to end the pain. He wanted to kill the scum who dared to end the life of an innocent person. "Ahhhhhh," Izuku heard a woman scream. "Wait, the victim is still alive. I have to save them. I have to." The rage and flames won out as Izuku's flesh was incinerated. "Rahhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhh cringed at how painful Izuku's transformation looked. Izuku! Izuka shouted. breaking free of Eraserhead's grip and running over to her brother. Izuku, now fully transformed, pushed his sister aside and formed a chain, and whipping it around into a spiral. In the spiral, a ring of fire formed and an image formed inside of it, and in seconds a portal was formed. Izuku extended his arm and 3 more chains came out of his hand and shot into the portal. The students heard screams and then saw 3 people, assumably villains, get thrown out of the portal. The villains were thrown onto the lawn, in front of the very bewildered students. "Holy shit, it's Ghost Rider," one of the villains shouted while he was getting up. "Shit," Eraserhead cursed. "Everyone get away. In any way you can. Go." Just as Eraserhead said that, Todoroki made a massive wall of ice, so large that it puts out the firewall that was blocking them. "Why didn't you do that earlier?" Mineta asked him. "Because he just would have made more fire or just attacked us directly. Now go," he responded, before making another ice wall, this time between Izuku and the villains. "Todoroki, what are you doing?" Eraserhead asked him. "I'm not going to just run while people die," Todoroki answered. "Everyone else get to safety and get the teachers. I'll hold him off the best I can." Izuku roared and formed a shotgun in his hand before pulling the trigger and blowing the ice wall apart, leaving the villains exposed. Izuku pulled the trigger again to end the villains' lives, but Todoroki made another ice wall just in time, blocking the bullet but destroying the ice wall again. "Are you crazy? He's gonna kill you," Kaminari exclaimed. "I can't call myself a hero if I run knowing full well that people are going to die behind me if I don't do anything," Todoroki said. "Now get the staff. I can't hold him forever, and if he uses more power then we're dead." Izuku was about to pull the trigger again when Eraserhead's scarf wrapped around the shotgun and pulled it upwards, causing the shot to miss. Then Bakugo rocketed himself forward and directly into Izuku at full power. Bakugo delivered an explosion-propelled kick to Izuku's chest, knocking him down but not hurting him in the slightest. "Damn it, Deku, snap out of it!" Bakugo shouted down at Izuku, who was doing everything he could to hold back and resist the rage. "Kaken, I can't. Need to kill. Need to end them," Izuku shouted as he let out a fireball from his mouth, blasting Bakugo off him. Oof. Bakugo hit the floor hard with a minor burn wound in his chest. Izuku got up and saw that the villains were attempting to run away. Still full of rage, Izuku opened his mouth and 3 spiked chains flew out aimed at each of the villains' vital organs. Todoroki made another ice wall to try and block the chains, but they just flew right through the wall, barely even slowing down. The chains got closer and closer to the villains, but just before they could impale them, Tsuyu's tongue wrapped around one of the villains, pulling him away from the chain's path. Then Ida ran in and grabbed another villain, rocketing him away from his death. The final chain was closing in on the final villain, but Izuku used her quirk to move it out of the way just in the nick of time. Eraserhead glared at his students, almost none of whom had done what he told them to, and fled. "What are you all still doing here?" As Todoroki said, "We can't just let these people die, villains or not." Ida said, "We're heroes, sensei." Kirishima said, "I'd be super unmanly to just let people die." "Mineta has already gone to get help, meaning the rest of us can stay and fight," Kaminari said. "Can't say I'm not terrified, but actually no, that's it, I'm terrified but I'll still fight." Eraserhead saw this determination in the eyes of his students and knew that no matter what he said they would still try to save these people. "Stupid. All of them. Brave and stupid," Aizawa grumbled. "Fine. Keep him away from the school. Midoriya is not in control of his actions and will mindlessly go after his targets. He's going to focus on them and not much else. Take advantage of that and keep them separated." Izuku, despite being right next to the man, Izuku didn't hear him. He was too focused on his prey to notice the words of anyone around him for the most part. Izuku dropped the shotgun and let out a massive fireball at the villain Izuku saved. Todoroki, knowing that an ice wall wouldn't do much to stop that, he made a trail of ice that moved quickly underneath the villain. When the ice trail made it under the villain, it quickly moved him out of the way of the fireball. With every missed attack, Izuku felt half revealed, half enraged, but it was the rage that came to the surface. He summoned his motorcycle next to him, and as he was getting on, Todoroki made a tall ice wall underneath the villain, putting him high in the air, where he thought he would be out of Izuku's reach. He was wrong, however, as Izuku rode directly at the ice wall, at breathtaking speeds. However, rather than smashing through the wall, like what would make sense, Izuku and his motorcycle went up the wall. Before Todoroki could react to this seemingly impossible feat, Izuku had already made it to the villain. Izuku grabbed the villain, who screamed the entire time, opened his mouth and breathed out a jet of flames that completely engulfed the villain. For a moment, no longer than a few seconds, every student could hear the screams of pain and anguish that came from the villain quickly being burned to death. Then he, as well as everyone else, went silent. The flames stopped and everyone could see the villain's burnt, unrecognizable corpse. Izuku threw the dead body to the ground, and every student watched with eyes wide as it traveled to the ground, where it promptly turned into a bloody pile of burnt flesh and ash. Everyone except for Aizawa stopped and stared in horror at the remains of the person they had tried to save. "Stop staring and move," Aizawa shouted. "Move or the rest of them are going to meet the same fate." This managed to break some of the students out of their haze as they noticed Izuku had made it back down to the ground with eyes on the villain Ida was holding. Seeing this, Ida ran as fast as he could away from Izuku, but it was a fruitless effort. Izuku caught up to him in a second and rode his bike right beside him. He opened his jaw ready to unleash another torrent of flames, but Ida threw the villain away at the last second and was engulfed in flames himself. "No!" Aizawa shouted as he watched his student get covered in fire. But seconds later, the fire stopped and Ida was unharmed. Everyone stopped again in confusion, but quickly started moving again once they realized Izuku was already turning around to run over the villain Ida had thrown on the ground. Just before the villain got run over by Izuku, a piece of tape wrapped around the villain's waist and pulled him aside. Zero didn't manage to get all of the villains out of the way of the bike, however, and Izuku ran over his arm, destroying it immediately. "Ahhhhhhhh." The villain screamed in pain as he looked at the flaming stump he now had instead of an arm. Zero cringed as he dragged the villain over to him. "Someone please do something. He's turning back around." Again, just before Izuku could run over the villain, Todoroki made an ice ramp in front Izuku, and due to the extreme speeds he was going at, he flew all into the air, over the villain, the students, and the UA wall. "That's not gonna keep him away for long. That motorcycle is freaking insane," Kaminari said. "We need to get him off that thing." "We need to do more than that," Todoroki said. "We're playing a game of keep away. We can't win. We need to find a way to stop him." "Wait, where is the frog girl and the other guy?" "I think I saw her in the bushes with him," Jiro said. "Good strategy. Remind me to praise her right before I expel all of you," Aizawa said, walking over to them with Izuka and a limping Bakugo. "If I can get him in front of me, I know I can talk him down," Izuka said. "I don't think he's in a talking mood," Jiro said. "No, that might work," Aizawa said, to the surprise of everyone. "Like I said, Midoriya isn't doing any of this of his own free will, he's just blindly attacking the villains out of anger. That's why we've lasted as long as we have. If Midoriya wanted those villains dead and was acting off of logical thoughts, then they would have been dead a long time ago." A few of the students gulped and the villains started crying harder. "But Midoriya is still holding himself back, another reason we've survived so long, and he even managed to speak to Bakugo," Aizawa said. "If his sister starts talking to him, he might be able to restrain himself. I've heard reports of Ghost Rider sparing people in the past, so I guess it's possible," Todoroki said. "I can use my powers to hold him in the air for a bit, but you'd have to get him off that motorcycle. It's moving too fast for me to get a lock on him," Izuka said. "A light well ice doesn't slip him up, he can ride up walls, it's indestructible," and he goes so fast we can barely even see him. Kaminari summed up. Who are we gonna get him off? You don't, said a voice from behind them. The student turned and saw that the staff had come at last. What took you so long? Aizawa asked. To be fair, that Mineta kid has really stubby legs. Present Mike said. Anyway, you've done enough, kids. Go back inside, let the pros handle it. Midnight said. You really think you can beat him by yourselves? Todoroki asked. Beat him? No, but we wouldn't be able to do that with your help either. Sniped said. Midoriya is basically invincible, but we can hold him off long enough to give him time to calm down. And how long is that gonna take? Sato asked. It typically takes somewhere between 30 minutes on a good day, an hour on a bad day. Present Mike said sheepishly. An hour, the students shouted. I know it sounds bad, but we're pros, please trust that we know what we're doing. Midnight said. Boom. WRRRR. WRRRR. Warning. North wall breached. Came the UA security system. We don't have time to argue. Smentos, get them out of here. A Razorhead said. Smentos used his quirk and the cement walls from the building reached out and grabbed the students. Hey, stop, Izuka shouted as she struggled against the cement. The walls liquefied, bringing the students through them and back inside the building. Smentos sealed up the entrance, leaving the students trapped inside. Alright, now what do we do? 13 asked. Midoriya is focusing on the villains, so keep them away from the school, Aizawa said. 13, Midoriya can regenerate, so don't hold back. Use your quirk on him and hold him in place. I doubt even he could resist a black hole if you get close enough. I'm not so sure about this. 13 said. Vroom vroom. Izuku came charging through the wall, his sights set on the villain behind the heroes. We don't have a choice, Aizawa said. Izuku charged at them at insane speeds, but Smentos managed to make a ramp just in time, causing Izuku to go flying over them once again. But this time, rather than going flying off into the distance, he swung his arm around and shot a spiked chain out of his hand. The chain planted itself into the ground, right between the criminal's legs, causing him to whimper. The chain stopped Izuku from flying any further, and when Izuku gave a massive tug on it, it caused Izuku to come falling down towards the villain. Ectoplasm spat out one of his clothes at Izuku, tackling him off his bike. Yeahhhhhh. Present Mike screamed at the mid-air motorcycle, causing it to move, falling down away from the villain. Izuku and the ectoplasm clone fell to the ground with the clone on top of Izuku. Izuku grabbed the clone's head with both hands and crushed its skull, causing it to melt into mush. He got up and looked directly at the villain, opening his mouth and letting loose another giant fireball. Smentos made a thick wall of concrete that blocked the attack. We can't hold him off forever. If he uses an attack similar to the one he used at Tartarus, then we've lost. Midnight said. We don't have a choice. No matter how far we get, the villain Midoriya will be right behind us, Smentos said. Izuku made a shotgun in his hand and shot the concrete wall, destroying it completely. Smentos remade the wall only for Izuku to blow it apart again. We have to do something. Sniped said. Wait, what's that fire circle over there? That's the portal he made, Aizawa said. Not sure why it's still open. Portal, Midnight shouted. He can make portals. Mineta didn't tell you, Aizawa asked. He just said, Ghost Rider is here, please help, oh god please help, we're all going to die. Sniped said. Can we focus? Midnight shouted. Midoriya opened that portal and brought those villains through. Right, Aizawa confirmed. And normally Midoriya only goes after villains right after they've committed a crime, and that crime is almost always attempted murder. Midnight said. And more often than not the victims are still alive or are dead children. Where are you going with this? Snipe asked. There's a chance that there is an injured person on the other side of that portal. Midnight deduced. That might be why Midoriya is keeping it open in the first place. Eraserhead's eyes widened with realization. If that's the case, then we could potentially use that to both stop Midoriya and save that person. But first we need to confirm that there is an injured person on the other side of that portal. Snipe said. Smentos, can you? Kaboom. For the last few minutes Izuku had been blowing up Smentos's walls and Smentos had been remaking them. Growing frustrated by this, Izuku turned his shotgun to ash and replaced it with a massive bazooka. The explosion went right through the wall, causing Smentos to go flying back. The teachers looked through the rubble to see Izuku aiming the bazooka at them. There was nothing they could do now. No walls to hide behind and no quick way to get out of range. All Izuku had to do was pull the trigger, and the villain the heroes were protecting would be no more. The villain screamed in fear as he knew his life was about to end. Izuku put his bony finger on the trigger and then, "Say cheese," said a voice from beside Izuku. Suddenly a massive flash engulfed the battlefield, courtesy of one Toru Hagakure, who Smentos had missed, due to her being invisible. "Hagakure, what are you doing?" Eraserhead shouted as he shielded his eyes. "I'm distracting him. He's not going after the students or the heroes, so I should be fine." Hagakure shouted. "Look, he's not even moving." It's true, Izuku was, strangely enough, staying completely still. "Yeah, it looked like it's working," Snipe said, his mask offering him some protection from the flash. After the rest of the heroes regained their sight, they saw that Izuku was still just standing still, not moving at all. Did the flash really stun him that much? Snipe asked with suspicion. "No, if we recovered then he should have by now as well," Aizawa said. "Unless he's weak to light. But he doesn't even have eyes. How would the flash have blinded him in the first place?" Midnight pointed out. "Actually, how does he see?" "Wait a minute, he doesn't have eyes," Eraserhead repeated. "Hagakure, I'm sorry in advance, but could you please move closer to him?" "Are you sure?" Toru asked, getting a really bad feeling about this for some reason. "Try it," Eraserhead insisted. Toru looked at Izuku, who was still completely frozen. She hesitantly took a step forward. Izuku immediately jumped back, averting his gaze from the invisible girl immediately. There was a short pause as everyone came to a realization. "He can see me," Toru shouted, immediately trying to cover herself. Since Izuku lacked eyes in his demon form, he had to use magic to see things. This magic allowed him to see the world similarly to normal people, but this magic wouldn't be fooled by things like illusions or invisibility. The minute Toru used her flash ability, Izuku saw her, and since she had taken off her clothes to maximize her quirk's usability, he saw her fully nude. Flustered embarrassment and murderous rage fought inside of Izuku, not allowing him to move as the two intense feelings fought each other, vying for control over his actions. The inner battle was intense as Izuku's desire to run away from the naked girl and Zarathos's desire to murder that he forced onto Izuku clashed. "Are you kidding me?" Midnight said. "All we had to do to get him to stop was strip naked." "Fuck, I can do that." Embarrassment wins. No. Izuku shouted. Izuku took back control of his body and swiftly ran away from Midnight and Toru. Izuku jumped through his portal and closed it. There was a long pause as everyone tried to process what just happened. And then the villain passed out. "Is that it?" Eraserhead asked. "Did it really end like that?" "Well, I guess no matter how powerful the man boobs always win the DAR." Midnight was interrupted when a portal formed in front of her and an injured woman was thrown at her. "Please take care of her, and I'm sorry I gotta go, sorry," Izuku said quickly before closing the portal. "Oh, so there was an injured person," Snipe said. "Quit later, go get recover girl," Eraserhead said. "We have a lot of work to do." A few hours later, Izuku slammed the door angrily as she entered her house. She was furious. How could they keep her from her brother? He was right there, and I couldn't even talk to him, she thought angrily. After the attack was over, they sent all the students home early and were assured that everything was safe now. Which barely anyone in her class believed. Izuka angrily stomped around in her living room cursing at the UA staff, when suddenly she heard something. FWOOSH. It sounded like fire, coming from her and Izuku's room. Panicking, Izuka ran over to her room, wondering what could possibly cause a fire in there. She slammed the door open, and instead of a fire, there on the bed was her brother, holding a book with a pentagram on it. It was right here, Izuku said, dumbfounded. It was here the whole time. And there's no blood on it. Izuka didn't say a word and instead just ran over and hugged her brother. Tears ran down her face as she cried on her brother's shoulder. Izuku, you idiot, why are you doing this? Izuka cried. Why? For a few moments, neither of them said another word, and the only sound came from Izuka's cries and sniffles. Izuku took a deep breath and steeled himself for what he was about to say. Sis, you may need to sit down. Izuku said. I'm going to tell you everything. One explanation later, Izuku and Izuka were sat next to each other on Izuku's bed. Izuka's eyes were wide after hearing the whole story. So, you sacrificed your soul to a demon to try and save Mom. That demon killed Mom using a loophole. You got saved by another demon called Zarathos who brought you back to life, and now that demon is forcing you to kill criminals so he can eat their souls and trap them inside some kind of stomach hell. Izuka summarized. Yes, Izuku confirmed. And you think this book, which is how you got into this situation in the first place, will help you fix that issue? Izuka asked. Yes, Izuku said. There was a short pause before Izuka hugged her brother once again. Izuku, I'm so sorry. All that sadness and anger must have driven you crazy. I'm sorry I didn't give you the help you needed. Sis, I'm not crazy. Izuku defended himself. I know what I saw, what I hear, what I feel. Besides, how else can you explain my powers? I can summon motorcycles and chains and guns out of nowhere. I can ride up walls. I can grow back my skull. I become super strong and fast despite not having any muscles. I turn into a skeleton and move and hear and talk with none of the things you would normally need to do those things. Do you think that one quirk could do any of that? And I'm not even supposed to have a quirk in the first place. Okay, your quirk is overpowered and weird, but magic. Demons. Really? Izuka said, not believing any of what her brother was saying. When babies started glowing and shooting ice and fire out of their eyes, people probably thought it was magic too. Who knows, maybe this is some sort of evolution of quirks or something. And the evolution of quirks that forces me to kill people. Izuku shouted. That part probably comes from you being crazy. Izuka shouted. You need help, Izuku. You need to turn yourself in and what? Izuku asked. You saw what I did to Tartarus. That was the most secure prison in the world. And I turned it into a smoldering crater. Even All Might couldn't stop me. You beat All Might, Izuka said, her eyes growing wide with shock. I can't be stopped, and I can't be held, Izuku said. They can't do anything to help me, Izuka. They'll probably just try to kill me, but they can't. I can't even die. The only thing I can do to keep myself from killing people is to try and stay calm, but sometimes that's not enough. I need to get this demon out of me as soon as possible. Izuka didn't know what to say. This whole situation was immensely frustrating. She sure as hell didn't believe Izuku's story about demons, and she was sure he was crazy. But at the same time, Izuku was right about no prison being able to hold him. He was simply too powerful. So how was anyone supposed to help him if they couldn't even keep him restrained? I have to go, Izuku said. I can't stay here too long, otherwise people might see and you'll get in trouble. I can't do that to you. No, Izuku, stay. Izuka said. We can figure out something together. I don't know what, but we can think of something. How am I supposed to protect you if you keep running away? Izuku gave his sister a sad look. Sis, you can't protect me from everything. You never could, and you only ever drove yourself crazy by trying. For once I need you to believe in me. Those words hit Izuka hard. Izuku took advantage of her emotional vulnerability and jumped out the window, with the book in his hand. Izuku quickly looked out the window to try and stop her brother, but it was too late. The next day after Izuku's attack, UA gave all the students the day off. The staff, however, had to attend a meeting to decide the best course of action moving forward. How did this happen? Snipe asked. While I doubt our security would stop Midoriya, or even slow him down, the alarms still should have gone off when he entered. And even then, if he was wandering the halls, then a student should have reported it. Not if he teleports in, Eraserhead added. He made a portal inside the school, and changed his clothes to avoid suspicion. Clever kid. Present Mike said. Also, can we talk about the whole portal thing? Midnight said. Since when has he been able to do that? No one has ever reported him being able to do that before. Meaning this is probably something he recently discovered. 13 added. This is getting ridiculous now. There has to be something up with Midoriya. No quirk can be this strong or versatile, especially considering that almost none of the ability he's shown have anything to do with his parents' quirks, with the exception of his pyrokinesis. Eraserhead said. Are you suggesting that he has multiple quirks? Nezu asked. I think that could be a possibility, Aizawa remarked. At this point, I think we can all concede that there is something more to Midoriya than what it seems. While no one has ever had multiple quirks before, I don't think we can possibly say that all this is just one quirk. Midnight said. Either this is some sort of evolution of quirks, or there is something else at play that we don't know about. Most of the staff seemed to agree with this sentiment, nodding their heads and muttering words of agreement. Aizawa, you said he was looking for you specifically. Can you tell us why that is? Nezu asked, subtly diverting the topic away from the possibility of multiple quirks. Oh right, he was looking for a book, Aizawa revealed. A book, Present Mike said, eyes wide in disbelief. He broke into the school, and caused all this trouble, over a book. He seemed desperate to get it too, Aizawa added. And he looked extremely frustrated when I couldn't tell him its location. Could you tell us what this book was, or any details about it? Nezu asked. Or why he thought you would know its location. I didn't get a title, but Midoriya told me he was holding it when he committed suicide, and that it had a pentagram on it, Aizawa revealed. Why would Midoriya have been holding a book like that while he killed himself? Midnight asked. Suddenly, Present Mike's eyes widened, and they could practically see the light bulb over his head. I've got it, he said. Now everything makes sense. Aizawa sighed. I'm scared to ask, but what exactly do you mean? Everything. The reason he kills criminals. Why he's so strong. Where he got all these powers. Why he won't let us help him. Why he wants to book. It all makes sense. Mike shouted. Izuku Midoriya killed himself and sold his soul to demons for power, but the demons must have tricked him somehow and are forcing him to kill criminals, and send their souls to hell. Now he's looking for the book to try and undo the ritual, and get his soul back. Once Mike finished, there was a long pause, as everyone sat and tried to figure out just what the hell came out of their friend's mouth. You know, Aizawa sighed. Part of me almost wants to believe that. If only because of how absurd this situation already is. Same, Midnight sighed, sitting back rubbing her temples. Well, do you guys have any explanation for this? Mike pouted. Snipe spoke. Well, no, but then demon it is. Mike shouted. We all need to start carrying holy water and crosses. You know, Mike may be onto something, Nezu stated. Everyone gave Nezu a bewildered, curious look. You think that demons are behind this? Smentos asked him. No, but it's possible, but Midoriya does, Nezu suggested. Let's think about the night Midoriya killed himself. I've looked it over and there are a few strange things. Firstly, there was red paint on the floor that was mixed in with Midoriya's blood, and there was a book with a pentagram not too far away from Midoriya's body on the floor, that was strangely free of any blood. So what you're saying is the kid tried to perform some kinda demonic ritual and took his life as a result. Aizawa figured out. I suppose that makes a level of sense. His mother had cancer after all, so it's possible he got desperate enough to believe the whole demon nonsense and tried to sacrifice himself for her sake. And then she ended up dying from a heart attack after seeing his body. Midnight said sadly. How tragic. Then after his quirk or quirks resurrected him, he thought that it was the work of demons and that his extremely strange and powerful quirk was demonic power. Nezu theorized. And then, it's possible that all the trauma from this incident, as well as most likely years of suppressed emotions and abuse, created a separate personality. Possible a demonic one, further convincing him that he, in fact, is possessed or something to that effect. Zarathos, Sniped said. Nezu reacted. Back when Midoriya first broke into UA, right before he left he shouted, Zarathos. Sniped said. It seemed like a name, the name of someone Midoriya particularly didn't like. But the name was so weird I thought I misheard it. But if Midoriya's second personality thinks it's a demon, then that name fits perfectly. This would also explain why he thinks we would be unable to help him, Aizawa added. If he was possessed by a demon, then obviously we wouldn't be able to do anything. So it stands to reason if he thinks he's possessed, then he wouldn't accept our help. So if we prove to him that he isn't possessed, then do you think he would agree to let us help him, and turn himself in? Midnight asked. Perhaps, but at the same time, we have no real way containing him. He destroyed Tartarus by himself. Smentos brought up. Perhaps we could put him in a permanent sleep state using drugs. Midnight suggested. How would we be able to help the kid if he's unconscious for the rest of his life? Aizawa asked. That's basically giving him a life sentence. Give me a break, it's not like you have any better ideas. Midnight snapped, her frustration getting the better of her. I still say we should use holy water, Mike added. We could go with Midnight's suggestion until we find another way of holding him. 13 suggested. And what happens if our, less than kind higher-ups, decide that they don't want to put in the effort to figure out another way and that they would rather keep Midoriya asleep forever? Smentos asked. You're all getting ahead of yourselves. We don't even know if we can get from point A to point B. You guys are talking about point E. Sniped said. The staff descended into arguing for several seconds until Nezu spoke up. Nezu said, using a slightly louder tone than normal to gain their attention. In a few seconds, the arguments stopped, and the staff stayed quiet to hear what Nezu had to say. We're not going to find a solution to this issue today. After all, we have other issues to deal with. Nezu reminds them. I've already figured out how to placate the parents, but we will need to provide professional help to Aizawa's class. That's right, those poor kids saw someone die in the most horrific way right in front of them. Midnight said, we're gonna need to do some tests on them to see the extent of the trauma. 13 noted, we're going to need to hire some more counselors for sure though. I think we also need to discuss what we should handle their expulsion, Aizawa said. None of them are getting expelled, Aizawa, Nezu said. They ignored a direct order and put themselves in harm's way, despite the fact that they were horribly outmatched. Aizawa reminded them, just one of those things would be grounds for expulsion, let alone all of them. I don't think you understand our situation, Nezu said. Izuku Midoriya is a mentally unstable child with godlike powers. The only reason anyone survives one of his attacks and the only reason there aren't dozens of dead heroes lining the streets is because he is restraining himself. We are at his mercy. If he, at any point, decides to kill us all, he could. And not even All Might would be able to stop him. Now how do you think he will feel if he finds out that an entire class was expelled because of him? Something he will definitely find out eventually because his sister is part of that class. Aizawa had no response. We need to be careful not to antagonize Midoriya, Nezu told them. Deal with this like you would a bomb. One wrong step, everyone dies. With just a few words, every hero was reminded of how powerless they were. And how terrifying it was. They couldn't imagine how Midoriya dealt with that feeling, every day. Meanwhile at a library, it's amazing, really, how one can have the power that surpasses anyone else on the planet, and yet still feel completely powerless. That was how Izuku felt as he looked through the demon book. The book did contain some information on Zarathos, but there was nothing at all about the whole soul bond thing, or how to reverse it. Sure, the fact that he now had access to information about Zarathos could be seen as a step forward, but to Izuku it felt like he was stuck. Izuku slammed his face into the book and was half tempted to cry. This was my only lead, Izuku shouted in his head. I've scanned through the entire section on Zarathos, but I can't find anything that even talks about what I'm going through. Is this the first time something like this has happened? Izuku felt himself begin to panic and knew he had to do something about it. He picked himself up before taking the book and putting it in a backpack that he bought. As he walked out the door, he pulled a cigarette out of his pocket and lit with his powers. A year ago Izuku would have never even considered using cigarettes, if only because of how his poor mother would react. But now things were different. Now any negative effects caused by smoking just didn't work on Izuku. Every time he transformed he incinerated his organs, and every time he transformed back he just regrew new ones, so even if his regeneration ability failed to stop the negative effects of smoking, the fact that he literally replaced his organs every time he transformed would. And he couldn't dismiss the calming effect of them either. Plus, his mother wasn't here anymore. Izuku inhaled deeply, letting the smoke fill his lungs, and calm him down. He was tired. Izuku stopped counting the days since he last slept. He didn't technically need sleep and he could still function at full capacity without it, but he still felt tired, his eyes still hurt and his brain still demanded that he rest. But he would never collapse, never pass out. He would only ever sleep if he wanted to. And right now, in an alleyway next to the library, when he met a dead end. He really wanted to sleep. So he closed his eyes, and immediately fell asleep. Inside Izuku, Zarathos's stomach. Izuku opened his eyes and found that he was in hell. Or rather the hell that was Zarathos's stomach. But this time it looked different. Izuku was on top of a pillar, looking down at what looked to be people down below, geysers of hellfire spewing left and right all over the bedrock caverns. I had thought you would stop wasting your time after a few months of fruitless searching, but it seems you're more stubborn than I had anticipated, said the demonic voice of Zarathos from behind him. Izuku turned around and glared at the demon, who was sitting on a throne of burning bones. Zarathos was still just as intimidating as before, but Izuku had stopped fearing for his own safety long ago and thus did not fear the demon. I'll never stop. Not until I've put you back where I found you, Izuku said definitely. Zarathos shook his skull and Izuku was pretty sure if he had eyes he would be rolling them. Perhaps I should explain our situation in more detail. Our souls are joined. They cannot be separated. Even if I desired to leave you I could not. Izuku's eyes widened. Wait, you couldn't leave, even if you wanted to. No, I am stuck here now, and forever. Forced to watch your pathetic attempts at resisting me. Zarathos responded. It's not so pathetic if I've managed to save some people, is it? Izuku spat back. A few insignificant souls, in comparison to the thousands that have died by our hands. Zarathos pointed out. But I'm getting stronger, Izuku said. When you first became part of me, I couldn't resist you at all. But now, we brought 3 villains out of that portal. And you only managed to make me kill one of them. One day I'll be strong enough to resist you completely, and then maybe you'll use your powers to help people. That statement resonated throughout Stomach Hell, leaving Zarathos quiet for several moments. You've gotten cocky, mortal. You forget that I know your weakness. Zarathos chided. Then Izuku felt it, the sensation that came whenever innocent blood had been spilled. But this time, he did not feel Zarathos's rage. Izuku gave Zarathos a suspicious look. What is this? Just watch, Zarathos said. It was then a portal opened in front of Izuku. Or rather, not a portal, but a window. It seemed to be showing what some else was seeing from their own eyes, and from the window, he saw a dark, shady lab. And whoever was seeing this was very short and tied to a chair. And Izuku could hear a very faint whimpering that sounded like it was coming from a little girl. Oh no, Izuku muttered, as his heart fell into his stomach. Then he saw a man wearing a bird mask walk up to the girl, holding knives and several needles. "You know what to do, Eri," the man said, revealing the girl's name. "Stay still, and this will be over quicker." The man's blade got closer and closer to the girl until the knife entered her arm. Slice. Izuku felt it. He could feel her pain. He felt as if the metal was tearing into his own skin and splitting it open. Of course, the physical pain was nothing to him, but knowing that this was happening to a little girl brought on a whole new kind of pain. The knife made a large cut in the girl's arm and the man took a needle and plunged it into her skin, draining blood from the girl pump by pump. Izuku expected the girl to be screaming her head off, yelling desperately for someone to help her. But she didn't. The only noise the girl made was pained whimpers, as if she was used to it. Slice. Another cut, another needle. More whimpers. Slice. Izuku's knees went weak. He wanted to vomit. Slice. 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 Izuku had no idea how long this lasted. It felt like forever, as the man in the mask cut the little girl up and drained the blood from her body. Eventually, the man stopped and pulled the needles from her body. "Time for a clean slate," the man said. He took off his gloves and Izuku heard the whimpering stopped, and the girl flinched. The man now ungloved hand reached out for the girl, and then pain. Pain engulfed every part of his body as if every part of his body was being taken apart. It only lasted a second, but it was easily the second worst pain he had felt. Second only to his transformation. And a little girl was going through it. The window had gone dark for a second, before immediately resuming showing the torture. The man came back at her, wielding the knives and needles once more. Slice, slice, slice. Slice. Izuku was absolutely stunned by this horrible display of cruelty. He could only watch with tears running down his face. I don't know what he just did to her. But when he touched her, she died. Zarathos explained. And then she came back to life. What a cruel fate. To be trapped in a place where your tormentors can hurt you as much as they please, kill you even. But not even death can free you. The girl seems quite used to it. Who knows how many times they've done this? Dozens, hundreds, maybe even 1,000 times. And she is, yes, about 7 years of age. As Izuku listened to Zarathos's words, we watched as the girl was cut open and drained of her blood, over and over, and over again. Izuku clenched his fist, and steam started to emit from it. More and more steam rose from his body, as his horror slowly turned into fury. "It seems you need a little help," Zarathos said. "Here, allow me." Back outside in the alley. The alleyway was engulfed in bright green light, as Izuku's eyes opened and he transformed. There was no resistance this time, no hesitation, no sadness, no regret. Only fury, only hate. The transformation was over in an instant, and Izuku in his demonic form walked onto the streets. People screamed and fled, but he paid them no mind. He summoned his motorcycle and sped off towards his destination, the Yakuza base. There was no internal struggle within him, no arguing, no resisting. There was nothing that could save them from hell's fury. If you enjoyed that part and want part 2, make sure to like and subscribe.